Hey, everybody. Welcome to Turning Point USA headquarters. I'm so excited for a variety of different reasons. When we first started Turning Point USA in June of 2012, we could never have dreamed that it would be as big and as influential as it is today. And now we have seen what has happened across the country, and we see what's happening on college campuses. We see what's happening, quite honestly, everywhere. And Turning Point USA has now grown into the premier conservative grassroots organization focused on educating students around the values of American exceptionalism, the Constitution, free enterprise, private property, and freedom of speech. I'm honored, truly, to tell you that today we start Turning Point USA Live. TPUSA Live will be a counter to the mainstream media's leftist nonsense for 3 hours of live programming a day, coming straight to you. So make sure that you hit the bell on YouTube. Make sure that you go to rumble.com, rumble.com, to follow us, because we're going to have amazing guests, commentary straight from Turning Point USA headquarters every single day. News breaks, we're covering it. Things are happening, we're covering it. At Turning Point USA, as you know, we play offense with a sense of urgency to win the American culture war. But even more than that, at Turning Point USA, we are on the cutting edge of what new programming looks like and what we're supposed to do. So when I'm able to do it, I'm going to open up Turning Point USA Live to be able to do just this, speak to you guys just for a couple minutes. And I'm actually going to be joining the great Jon Root. I think we got Benny Johnson and Alex Marlow. Is that right? Benny, yeah. We're going to be joining all of them on the main let's just say it's the grass at Turning Point USA, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I want to say, if you're watching this and you're not yet involved with Turning Point USA, go to tpusa.com. That's tpusa.com. And special thanks to the Turning Point USA media team. This is a big day for Turning Point USA. So we're making history, doing 3 hours of live programming in addition to all the grassroots component that we are doing is truly and completely remarkable. So I want to just share a little bit about some things that are on my mind, and then we're going to shoot it on over to the rest of the Turning Point USA Live team. Recently, President Biden has said that any employer that has 100 employees or more, that he is going to come down and he is going to mandate, employees or more, mandate that they or we give the vaccine. So we at Turning Point USA, it's kind of fitting as we're talking about Turning Point USA Live, we have 200 plus employees. And I refuse to violate the privacy of my own employees. You see, that's the most important thing. This is not about me. This is about our employees at Turning Point USA. Make whatever medical decision you want. We have some vaccinated people on staff. We have some unvaccinated people on staff. I'm unvaccinated. It's not my business. I don't care. I'm not going to ask you questions about your medical decisions. But Joe Biden and the Biden presidency and the Biden administration is now saying that they want to go after private businesses and tell us how we do our business. This is wrong in a variety of different ways. As Professor Alan Dershowitz has said, the federal government does not have police power. They're only able to regulate movement between states. So this is probably unconstitutional. But I could tell you right now, if this proceeds, if the Biden regime does try to implement this, they will be met with a lawsuit from Turning Point USA in federal court almost immediately. This is tyranny. This is authoritarianism at its finest. The federal government thinking they can march into our office here at Turning Point USA and tell our young employees what they can do, not going to happen. And that's kind of what defines us at Turning Point USA, is that we are fighters. We hold the line. As we've said before, we play offense with a sense of urgency to win the American culture war. Also on my mind is a tape that we're going to cover later in the program of something that happened at Michigan Tech University. Turning Point USA, students there were tabling, and some sort of person, I guess you could say, wearing a dress and many masks came up and started to throw tables over and get very, very angry. And this is just another example of how the left hates the idea that there are other ideas. That leftists will come after you on these college campuses, sometimes violently. Thankfully, no one got hurt. But I could tell you, I'm so inspired by our Turning Point USA high school leaders, by our chapter leaders. They go into the fire every single day. I truly believe that, one of the things that we need to help save the country is for people to be the same in public that they are in private. That we need people to say, you know what? I'm not going to just be a closeted conservative. I'm going to get out there into the streets and I'm going to proclaim my beliefs regardless of what people say about me or what they try to do to me. At Turning Point USA, at TPUSA.com, check it out, guys, because all of this is powered by Turning Point USA. Our whole ethos is on the ground, grassroots. We're not just people that sit behind the desk. We are in the trenches. We are fighting on the front lines. We are going to school board meetings. That is who we are, everybody. And when you guys support us at Turning Point USA, you know that we are going to, in massive numbers, actually get onto the American front lines to start new chapters, to host bigger events, to persuade people to love the country. We are in the midst of a culture war right now, and nothing we do, let me say that again, nothing we do at Turning Point USA is political. It's all educational. It's all cultural. It's all about hearts and minds and persuading people around truth. And so that's really what's on my mind today, and we're going to be doing this kind of rundown as we get into Turning Point USA Live every single day. But this is my one takeaway for all of you. Do something today that you didn't do yesterday to help save Western civilization. We have students all over here at our office, I should say not just students, but also staffers, and they are working day and night to bring you the content, to give you the programming, to give you what is necessary to be able to fight back. And so I'm really excited to be able to say that after many months of planning, today, Turning Point USA launches the premiere, the historic, the unprecedented, the battleship itself, Turning Point USA Live, which will be the heartbeat of the conservative movement. And anyone that wants to be an activist, this is the place for you. If you want to all of a sudden say, you know what, I'm going to get off the couch, I'm going to get in the fight, that's what we do at Turning Point USA. And now, enjoy.
In these United States of America, this great country of ours, we American Indians, we can be anything we want to be, except American Indians.
A lot of the soldiers were very aggressive, so the women did get raped.
What we call huelte. Huelte means a place of suffering, dying, starvation, nothing good. Just like Nazi concentration camps.
I didn't realize how corrupt things were. I didn't realize what kind of environment we were living in.
We had no running water, we had no power.
They de-incentivize people from, opportunity.
That's why our suicide rate has climbed up astronomical rates.
I moved from the poorest county in America, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, to the richest area in the country, the Navajo Indian Reservation. There is no difference. The poorest and richest reservations in our nation suffer from identical problems. This is not anything new. This is an everyday occurrence in all tribal governments.
So my life and my tale and my truth has been to fight socialism. And I'm hoping that I can wake up as many Navajos as I can to tell them that you can do this. Yeah, even if I have to fight you to save you. And I think that's what I'm also projecting to my people. Even though they are so harsh on social media and they completely hammer at me, I tell them, I'll be here even if I have to fight you to save you.
Here's your daily freedom seed. The second trimester of pregnancy is full of life. During the second trimester, thousands of miracles happen throughout the development process for a preborn baby. The second trimester happens during the 4th, 5th, and 6th months of pregnancy, and it's often when moms feel their baby move in the womb for the first time. At the beginning of this important trimester, a baby's bones are hardening and skin becomes thicker to protect them. A few weeks in, they begin moving their ears and eyes and are even growing tiny fingernails. By week 18 of pregnancy, a baby in the womb can hear sounds from the world around them. And a few weeks later, they keep moving around powerfully enough to be felt by their mom. By week 23, unique fingerprints are formed. At week 25 of pregnancy, towards the end of the second trimester, babies actually can respond to the sound of someone's unique voice with movement. Sadly, in 2014, Planned Parenthood's Guttmacher Institute identified over 100,000 abortions performed in America in the second and third trimesters alone. This is anything but a clump of cells. It's a beautiful preborn baby who can't wait to meet you face to face and deserves a chance at life. I'm Isabel Brown, and there's your ammo to win America's culture war. The second trimester of a pregnancy is full of growth and life. Don't forget to hit the heart button, share to educate others, and save this episode to add to your arsenal of knowledge from Turning Point USA.
No, I am a witch. I am. I swear. Holy Lord, I have sinned times without number and am guilty of pooping in my pants. Oh, dang, and I messed up the prayer. I guess that means I'm in league with the devil. You should probably bury me alive. Turn around, I'm making a rock levitate behind you right now. Oh, too slow, you missed it. Why do I hang outside the church? Trying to put a hex on the minister. That way I'll really be hanging outside the church, you know what I mean? No, it's not allergies, it's demonic possession. Why would I want to be a witch? I love being a Puritan woman in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. It's so easy and fun. Oh yeah, I have tons of witch markings. This one, this one, this one. Sarah Osborne was accused? That lucky
We laugh because if we don't laugh, we'll cry. Also, shout out to all the conservatives who feel like they're the victims of a witch hunt from Washington right now. Would you be shocked if I told you that Hollywood is literally making a reality show to create more political activists? Jennifer Aniston had an awkward British interview, Lorde has drug-inspired albums, and Fox News investigated who the heck Grimace from McDonald's really is. I'm Alex Clark, and this is Poplitics. You know by now that the left uses Hollywood to make TV shows and movies that are chock full of leftist propaganda.
Brainwashed? Don't you think you're brainwashed?
Well, they're not even hiding it at this point. CBS just announced that they're creating a brand new reality show called The Activist, which will be hosted by celebrities Julianne Hough, Priyanka Chopra, and Usher. Deadline is reporting that The Activist is a competition series that features 6 inspiring activists teamed with 3 high-profile public figures working together to bring meaningful change to one of 3 vitally important world causes: health, education, and environment. Activists go head-to-head in challenges to promote their causes, with their success measured via online engagement, social metrics, and host input. The 3 teams have one ultimate goal: to create impactful movements that amplify their message, drive action, and advance them to the G20 summit in Rome, Italy. There, they will meet with world leaders in the hope of securing funding and raising awareness for their causes. The team that receives the largest commitment is celebrated as the overall winner at the finale, which will also feature musical performances by some of the world's most passionate artists. Isn't this essentially capitalism, since the best activist idea wins? I thought that rich, elitist Hollywood hates capitalism. I thought they hate merit.
You have my attention, my slightly shorter friend.
Who will win? Will it be Danielle screaming into her camera about white supremacy while driving? Will it be Tonka screaming at a 7-Eleven cashier because they got their gender wrong?
I just added bug to my list of pronouns, so here's a very quick tutorial on how to use bugs pronouns in sentences. Okay, let's go. I'm meeting up with my friend Moth later. Bug just dyed Bug's hair, and it's this super cool green color right now. I think we're gonna go to Bug's house and play some video games. And then I think Bug said that Bug wanted to go to the store by Bug's self. So I'm gonna head out after that, and then maybe we'll get to hang out another time.
Will it be Melanie screaming and crying about towels?
Who knew that finding a towel that was plus-size friendly in a mainstream store would be like shopping for a needle in a haystack? So I've tried on towels, like literally tried towels on in stores, and have yet to find one that fits my body. Example A. Here I am in the wild trying on towels that are called oversized bath towels. And surprise, surprise, it didn't fit me.
Or will it be Alex Clark begging Anya Taylor-Joy to poop on her porch? Cast your votes now. Standard text rates will apply.
Poop again!
Maybe they should just call the show Twitter, cause that's what this sounds like. Twitter as a reality show. Oh, and maybe they should use Gal Gadot's Imagine Pandemic remix as the theme song.
Imagine there's no heaven.
Of course, the left won't realize how self-absorbed and narcissistic all of this is, but that's to be expected. How many episodes until some sort of anti-white supremacy activist is a contestant? Will they cast anyone pro-life or someone fighting against critical race theory in schools? Will the losers get participation trophies? So many questions.
Absolutely, positively, emphatically, beyond the shadow of a doubt, and oh no!
One of my absolute favorite shows that has come out in the last 2 years has been The Morning Show on Apple TV with Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon, and Steve Carell. It's inspired by the Today Show and all that Matt Lauer drama that happened, and they haven't been able to film for a year because of the pandemic, but the second season is finally coming out this Friday.
The game is changing. My job is to ensure the stability of UBA. Alex, I need you to come back. You are the only thing that can save us.
I don't think I've ever said that before.
Jennifer and Reese have been working really hard together to promote it, and they did an interview with a British TV show that was so awkward. It left viewers around the world cringing after it went viral.
You actually went behind the scenes of a real live TV show, Good Morning America, huge show. What did you learn about the crazy world of live TV?
Well, nothing that you guys don't already know. Just the slow burn that it is. It's you know, it's a very vampire state of life, mind that you guys live in. It's you know, everybody comes alive in the middle of the night, and it's this slow moving train. And I got there at 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was kind of, the hallways are sort of quiet. And, you know, people are just slowly waking up. And then all of a sudden the wheels just, the train starts moving, and it gets crazier and crazier and crazier. And then somehow you don't know how on earth the show is going to be put on live at 7 o'clock, as though nothing, not even a bead of sweat has taken place. It's utter chaos until they say,
yeah,
you know.
Reese, I'm
3,
going
2, 1.
to be honest with you. Jennifer's pretty much sold it to me that she's not a morning person. So I'm going to ask you, are you a morning person?
Did I sell that to you?
A little bit.
Did I get a good deal?
All right, so people are torn on this. Was he the rude one, or was Jennifer? Let me know in the Instagram comments, because I feel like maybe he was just trying to poke fun in, you know, a friendly way, because she obviously seemed to be having a little trouble telling her story. But even if his joke was in good fun, she was less than thrilled.
You okay?
Lorde says all of her albums are drug-themed. Melodrama is MDMA, Pure Heroin is alcohol, and Solar Power is marijuana.
Come on, Lorde. Fight the twitchies. You can do it.
Yeah, I think this is all very on brand for her. I mean, have you seen her dance? She sort of looks like a fly that flew into one of those lights and is now sizzling to death.
No! Harry, no! Don't look at the light!
I can't help it. It's so beautiful.
Or actually, she looks exactly like Elaine from Seinfeld. You know. Hey, this Friday is a Spillover podcast. You should watch it and show it to your friends. Make sure you subscribe to Poplitics on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Hey, the Spillover. Ow!
It's tempting, but
That was my very obnoxious way of reminding you that the Spillover drops Friday, y'all! Okay, a few episodes ago, I told you that my nickname for my dad is Grimace, the purple guy from McDonald's, because when I was little, there was a time where the only color I would wear was purple.
What's wrong, Ronald Coon? Could it be your craving by McNuggies?
Reese Recently, a debate has started online of people trying to figure out what grimace is.
Ronald, the Happy Meal isn't happy yet.
Gucci, Gucci, goo. It just needed a good tickle.
McDonald's tweeted this, and I had to laugh. It's always, what is grimace? And never, how is grimace?
I gotta be honest, I can't get a beat on you, man.
So Fox News did an investigative report, and they think grimace is supposed to be a giant taste bud.
I've had Bellyland with more flavor.
I thought grimace was just a shapeless purple thing. I didn't think he was actually supposed to be something. Did you? Have you heard this taste bud theory?
I guess that's your theory.
Existentialism has entered the chat. How about why is grimace?
The foolishness of that comment is so deep, I can only ascribe it to higher education. You have to have gone to college to say something that stupid.
I think we just got our answer. Dennis Prager is grimace.
Whoa.
We are the first ever daily conservative pop culture show. Make sure you are following us at our main home on Instagram at Poplitics. You're tapping the heart on this episode too before you leave. Let me know in the comments what you think grimace is and your thoughts on that new reality show, The Activist. DM this episode to 2 friends and hit the save button so it helps out algorithms show our episodes. We're back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Your free life hack of the week, as promised, is find a shoe cobbler. They can bring your favorite heels back to life and your favorite purse. Pop culture without the propaganda every single day. I'm Alex Clark, and this is Poplitics. Support Poplitics, the first ever conservative pop culture daily show, by subscribing to our channel, turning on notifications, and of course, hitting the thumbs up. Also, our main home is on Instagram. Seriously, just trust me, that's where the real magic happens. Follow us there at Poplitics.
It's time for your daily freedom seed. Elected or forced, socialism is still socialism, which means complete government control of everything. And democratic socialism is the exact same thing. For example, Venezuela. Not too long ago, this beautiful place was one of the richest countries in the world. Now enter Hugo Chavez. After being elected as the Democratic Socialist president, the government seized private property and destroyed the free market. Today in Venezuela, the only people thriving are the government leaders stealing everyone's money in the form of taxes. Everyone else literally eats trash off the street to survive. People have lost roughly 25 pounds per year due to starvation, and millions have fled as refugees. Doesn't matter if it's democratically elected in or forced upon a nation's people. Socialism is still socialism. I'm Isabel Brown, and there's your ammo to win America's culture war. Socialism sucks. Don't forget to hit the heart button, share to educate others, and save this episode to add to your arsenal of knowledge from Turning Point USA.
Lipstick is red, woke faces turn blue, cinnamon rolls are queens, I've got pop culture for you. All the juicy, wormy, newsworthy 411 is coming to you every single day on Poplitics at its new home, TPUSA Live. It's like Barbie's dream house, but bigger and pinker.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily. Today's top stories: the truth about Bush, Afghanistan, and 9/11. Second, Biden and Milley bombed an Afghan aid worker that was not the imminent ISIS threat that we were told. Third, Fauci calling for vaccine mandates for air travel. And finally, Tony Blinken's testimony this week on the ropes. All of this and more ahead. Human Events Daily. So we just went through the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And while a lot of people were expecting a solemn day of remembrance, George W. Bush, the arch neocon, decided instead to make a politicized speech targeting who? You, the American people, who don't support the endless wars, who don't support the forever interventions anymore, and who just won't pay attention and do as you're told, like the elites want. So let's unpack that a little bit. What is a neocon? What is a neoliberal? And what is the new right, right? This is Human Events Daily. We're not neocons. We're not neolibs. We're here to give you the facts, and we're here to stand up for the American people. Period. End of story. The elites are not part of the agenda here. So he was a neocon, right? Who's a neocon? George W. Bush. Here he is. That's what a neocon is. Second, what is a neoliberal? Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, great examples. And finally, of course, we have Joe Biden, who sometimes he's not even there, folks. Sometimes he's just not even there. But he's pushing more of that same agenda that we've seen. Invade the world, invite the world, open borders, go and focus on the energy resources, the economic resources of what's overseas, use that to import to the United States, prop up mujahideen groups throughout the Gulf region, try to do regime change in countries we don't like. That's the neoconservative agenda, right? This is what the populist movement is all about stopping. No more are we going to have this rule of the elites doing what's best for their class rather than what's doing good for the American people. Simple. It's really simple, actually. So you go back and look at this throughout the 90s even. When Clinton's State Department was in, you had people there who in the United States in the 1990s were supporting the Taliban. Why? They wanted a pipeline deal from the Caspian Sea all the way down to the Arabian Gulf that would bypass Iran, that would go through Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and on the way down. And they viewed the Taliban as the best way to get a government that was pro-Western. Remember, this was the same mujahideen that back in the 80s they had supported against the Soviet Union. That's what it was all about. Another extension of the great game. The Bushes, the Cheneys, they were all in on this. The Iraq War, another great example of that. Folks, we're done with it. We're done with the lies. We're done with the misrepresentations, the half-truths, and the bold-faced lies of people like Colin Powell going forward and saying that there are active weapons of mass destruction programs. How many Americans died? How many trillions of dollars were spent on these wars in the Middle East while you've got potholes in the United States of America, while your kids' schools aren't fully funded, while we're facing so many problems here at home, while the borders in this country are completely open in many places, but we're going to go and protect the borders of Afghanistan rather than actually do what's right for the American people. It's really as simple as that. We're turning things around, folks. We're turning things around, and this is the point. And so George W. Bush, when he's up there, and he turns that solemn event into an attack on the American people, because remember, they didn't just overthrow, the Clinton dynasty, right, in 2016. They first got rid of the Bushes. Jeb Bush was thrown to the dustbin of history, along with the legacy of his brother, along with the legacy of their father. Why is this? Folks, we've got resources here in the United States, in Alaska, in Texas, in so many places. We don't need this anymore. We can develop the resources right under American soil. 9/11 happened because Osama bin Laden and his band of Wahhabists and Islamists and Muslim Brotherhood supporters, people at certain levels within the Saudi government, right? Not the Saudi government writ large, not the entire regime, but members, certainly members. We've seen that in the 28 pages. But Bush didn't want that information coming out. Why? Because he didn't want it to affect the oil relationship. Folks, if we have terrorists out there that are targeting the homeland, that are targeting the United States, we're going to go and get them. But we're done with the regime change. We're done with gender studies programs in Kabul. We're not going to turn Kandahar into Silicon Valley. And we're done trying. Stay tuned, because ahead we are going to talk a little bit more about specifically what just went wrong in Afghanistan. Human Events Daily continues.
In these United States of America, this great country of ours, we American Indians, we can be anything we want to be, except American Indians.
A lot of the soldiers were very aggressive, so the women did get raped.
What we call huelte. Huelte means a place of suffering, dying, starvation, nothing good. Just like Nazi concentration camps.
I didn't realize how corrupt things were. I didn't realize what kind of environment we were living in.
We had no running water, we had no power.
They de-incentivize people from, opportunity.
That's why our suicide rate has climbed up astronomical rates.
I moved from the poorest county in America, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, to the richest area in the country, the Navajo Indian Reservation. There is no difference. The poorest and richest reservations in our nation suffer from identical problems. This is not anything new. This is an everyday occurrence in all tribal governments.
So my life and my tale and my truth has been to fight socialism. And I'm hoping that I can wake up as many Navajos as I can to tell them that you can do this. Yeah, even if I have to fight you to save you. And I think that's what I'm also projecting to my people. Even though they are so harsh on social media and they completely hammer at me, I tell them, I'll be here even if I have to fight you to save you.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
And we're back. Now, folks, I want to go back and take everyone back to the moment right before the United States evacuated their last flight from Afghanistan. You remember the chaos, you remember the insanity, everything was going on at that airport. There were bombs going off, there were people falling off of airplanes. And then there was a drone strike. And the drone strike came down, and General Milley and the administration told us that they had stopped an imminent ISIS threat to the airport there in Kabul. Play the clip. Play General Milley. I want you to hear this.
We had very good intelligence that ISIS-K was preparing a specific type vehicle at a specific type location. We monitored that through various means, and all of the engagement criteria were being met. We went through the same level of rigor that we've done for years, and we took a strike. So that we did. Secondly, is we know that there were secondary explosions. Because there were secondary explosions, there's a reasonable conclusion to be made that there was explosives in that vehicle. The third thing is we know from a variety of other means that at least one of those people that were killed was a ISIS facilitator. So were there others killed? Yes, there are others killed. Who they are, we don't know. We'll try to sort through all that. But we believe that the procedures at this point, I don't want to influence the outcome of an investigation, but at this point we think that the procedures were correctly followed and it was a righteous strike.
Now, at the time, remember, the administration wouldn't tell you the names of the people who were struck. And almost immediately, we had reporting, and I had posted this as well at Human Events, and I had tweeted about this, and it was all out there, that there was a family that was struck. Millie said, oh, well, there were other people, but it was a righteous strike. Folks, now we know, through reporting, an investigation on the ground, who actually was hit. The guy was an aid worker. He wasn't making bombs. He was filling water bottles for his family because the pipes didn't work in his house. So he was filling up water bottles at work, putting them into his car and driving them home so his children could have something to drink. Biden and Millie and the analysts and whoever was looking at this thing saw all of that going on and said, my gosh, we think those are bombs. Look at the size of the containers. That's got to be a bomb. What else could it be? Let's kill them all. And that's what they did. Folks, a lot of people misunderstand the Afghanistan situation. I understand it from my perspective of having been an intelligence officer in the United States Navy, having been someone who did work in the interrogation cell. I served there at Guantanamo Bay for a time doing counterterrorism. You have to understand how we look to them, okay? How the United States government looks to them. If you are 18 years old in Afghanistan, you don't know what 9/11 was. Yeah, you've heard about it, but you have no sense of it, no emotional resonance of it. You just know that there's been an army patrolling your streets, an army of foreigners who speak a different language, have a different culture, don't believe in your religion, and they are controlling your country. And then every once in a while, they blow up some family and claim they were terrorists. If that was going on in the United States, what do you think would happen? What do you think the response would be? You're creating more terrorists by doing this. Every single time. And for 20 years, the United States was doing this. Initially, it made sense. Initially, the operations of sending in our special operators to specifically go after the Al-Qaeda cell that conducted the 9/11 attacks, wipe them out, knock them out of Tora Bora, that all made sense, and it worked well. But the nation building, the occupation, we looked like a foreign empire trying to impose our ideals like gender studies and everything else that was going on in Afghanistan upon the people there who didn't want it, and then we were killing families like this. General Milley, this guy is a complete disgrace. And I've been hearing from people that are in the officer corps all the way up to 06, right? So the highest level colonel or captain in the Navy before you put on that star and become an admiral or general. They are sick of the chain of command. There is a crisis of confidence between where things stand now and where they could be. They understand what went wrong in Afghanistan. They also understand that they went there, the men who served, went there with the best of intentions and went there to defend America and to help people. But the leaders, again, the corrupt elites in this country, and General Milley, I'm sorry, buddy, but you take the cake. So why don't you resign and go spend some time, propped up at some left-wing academic institution worrying about white rage and what went wrong, apologizing for being out there and clearing out Antifa protesters, right, during the riots of 2020. Sir, you're a joke. You're an absolute joke, and this is on you. Stay tuned, because we'll be talking about other federal bureaucrats who are jokes coming up next when we talk about Anthony Fauci.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country's very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for drive, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
If you want to see an example of failed socialism, go to an Indian reservation.
A lot of the soldiers were very aggressive, so the women did get raped.
Muerte means a place of suffering, dying, starvation, nothing good.
I didn't realize how corrupt things were. I didn't realize what kind of environment we were living in.
We had no running water, we had no power.
They de-incentivize people from, opportunity.
That's why our suicide rate has climbed up astronomical rates. I think that's what I'm also projecting to my people, even if I have to fight you to save you.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
Folks, the vaccine mandates are here. The new authoritarians are in charge, and they're the same as the old authoritarians. I want you to hear the latest clip from Dr. Anthony Fauci. Let's roll.
If we get the overwhelming proportion of the population vaccinated, we will get to herd immunity. If we do it in the next 6 months, it will happen in the next 6 months. If we do it in the next 2 months, it'll happen in the next 2 months. I would support that. If you want to get on a plane and travel with other people, that you should be vaccinated. When you hear us say, should you mandate vaccination for children to be able to attend school, some people say, oh my goodness, that would be terrible to do that. But we already do that and have been doing that for decades and decades. I don't know what school you went to, but the school that I went to, you had to be vaccinated for measles, mumps, rubella, polio, or otherwise you couldn't go to school. So it is not something new to mandate vaccines for school children. The solution that we have at our hands is vaccines.
Now, I want to be very clear about this, right? He understands that people don't have problems with the vaccines that we've been using for years. People have a problem with the new one that was just rolled out and is now being mandated, not just for air travel, that what he wants, but now he's talking about for your children, right? That is what people have a problem with. They say this thing is new, we are worried about adverse effects. That's common sense. That's just common sense. But I want you to understand, you have to pair this with what Joe Biden, CNN, and all the rest of them have been doing for over a week now. The President of the United States came out last week and said that this pandemic is your fault if you're unvaccinated. If you are part of the minority, that is not obeying, that is not complying with government mandates, you are the cause of the pandemic now. You, not the CCP, not the lab in Wuhan, not all the lies of Fauci and Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance, Lancet, and all the rest of it. No, because remember, we weren't allowed to talk about that lab. And Shizheng Li, the Batwoman, and all of the experimentation that she was doing on the humanized chimera mice experiments. No. It's your fault now. You, the unvaccinated, are the new underclass, the unvaxxed underclass. That's what they want you to be, a second-class citizen. They don't want you riding on planes. They're not going to allow your children to go to school. If you're in the military, and I had people come up to me at Mass just this last weekend, and they said, we've got people in our family who are active duty, and they're being told that they can't deploy, they're being pulled off mission. They're going to the chaplains, and the chaplains were instructed not to help them get a religious exemption, right? Because people have serious questions about the role of abortion and some of the research that was done here. No. They said that the chaplains were trying to encourage them not to get a religious exemption. That's what's going on in the US military. Think of it, you are going to lose a class of people and skill sets and capabilities that were serving this country, that were defending this country. But Joe Biden doesn't care about that because it's not really about helping these people. It's about power. The same way that every cynical, political authoritarian has been throughout history. We have to stop this minority before they destroy the country, before they destroy the people. You know, the ACLU, if you go back, 2008, prior, et cetera, they used to be against vaccine mandates for this very reason. They don't work. This is coercion, not persuasion, not encouragement, right? They're not even talking about natural immunity anymore. Why is that? If you had COVID, do you have the antibodies? They don't care. They don't care about how many people have recovered from this, and do they have long-lasting immunity because they have the antibodies? So folks, we're going to fight this. Stay tuned. We're going to fight this because this is the hill to die on. Stay tuned because in our last segment, we are going to be having an interesting talk about someone who is fighting on a hill of his own, Mr. Tony Blinken, coming up.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
If you want to see an example of failed socialism, go to an Indian reservation.
A lot of the soldiers were very aggressive, so the women did get raped.
Muerte means a place of suffering, dying, starvation, nothing good.
I didn't realize how corrupt things were. I didn't realize what kind of environment we were living in.
We had no running water, we had no power.
They de-incentivize people from, opportunity.
That's why our suicide rate has climbed up astronomical rates. I think that's what I'm also projecting to my people, even if I have to fight you to save you.
Tony Blinken has a rough week ahead of him. And this comes at the end of a few rough weeks and a few rough meetings that he's been going through. They are going to have to put him through the ringer coming up in his testimony this week before the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And here's the dirty little secret, folks. Foggy Bottom, the United States State Department, that's where they're from, the building there, has actually turned against Tony Blinken, according to multiple U.S. officials that I've spoken with from the State Department, from the White House. Why? Because Tony Blinken, months before the Afghanistan debacle, actually canceled the Pompeo withdrawal plan, the crisis response team that had all been put in place. National Pulse had the scoop on this, and I want to make sure that they get credit for it. But folks, you need to take a look at this and what's coming up, because Tony Blinken has to answer questions from the senators and from the congressmen about what he knew, when he knew it, why he canceled that plan, and what's coming up next. So Tony Blinken, if I have a message for you, it's probably this. You are not going to be getting a lot of good sleep. But if you want the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, then head to mypillow.com, Tony, and use promo code POSO for up to 66% off. And Tony, maybe even after you have to resign in disgrace, you can at least get a good night's sleep. And Republicans, by the way, are also now talking about having heard that there was a conversation that Tony Blinken had where he was actually making some disparaging comments about a senior member of the administration, emphasis on senior, out in the East Hamptons at a dinner there. But I'll leave that for the committee to bring up later. Folks, the dirty little secret is, again, as I said, Tony Blinken is just the latest in a figurehead of all the neocons, the neolibs, the foreign policy corrupt establishment that we've had in this country. And at humanevents.com, we've got a huge plethora of articles all about 9/11, how this country has changed, how our people have changed, everything that led up to it, everything that's happened since. So go and read that. It's an excellent collection, and really get a sense of how we could have failed so badly in terms of all of this. And Tony Blinken, sir, you played a major role in all of these things. Not just Afghanistan, by the way, but even back during the Iraq War, when you were part of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee yourself. Remember, there was this crazy idea to divide Iraq up into 3 countries. It was going to be Kurdistan, Shiistan, Sunnistan. No, this was all Tony Blinken. It was never going to work, right? But you said, well, there's sectarian violence. You just build up. He's an idiot, folks. He's an idiot. It doesn't surprise me that the CCP delegation totally ate his lunch. They stole his lunch from him in Anchorage and then ate it right in front of him, right? And that was supposed to be the big, first lead meeting between Tony Blinken, the U.S., and the new administration and China. Tony, you weren't whining and dining them all these years. They were whining and dining you. So you're going to have to answer some questions. Why did you cancel the Pompeo plan? Why didn't you let those charter flights out? Why did your State Department block flights from private special operators and veterans that were trying to go to third-party countries? Why did you block all this, Tony? All of these answers and more will be found in your testimony. Folks, thank you so much. Well, folks, that is it. That's all the time that I am going to take up from you. I know there's a lot of podcasts out there, so I'm not going to give you a self-love fest for 3 hours a day every day. No. 30 minutes. 30, that's it. You listen to double speed, 15 minutes. So share this out. Human Events Daily. We're going to be here every single day, part of Turning Point Live. Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, everywhere possible until they knock us off. But I do want to leave you with this. It's your moment in history. So today's moment in history, I want to take you back to 1683, September 12th, 1683. We just had the anniversary. The Battle of Vienna. The Ottoman Empire was storming through Europe. They had sieged Vienna for 30 days until the Pope had put out a call to save Christendom. And King Sobieski of Poland and the winged hussars stormed down from the mountains, smashed the Ottomans, and saved Europe. Folks, that's all the time we have again here. Thank you so much for joining us. Human Events Daily. Share this episode everywhere. Share it with your friends. Be the change. Be the multiplier. Be the influencer. And ladies and gentlemen, you have my permission to lay ashore.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
Do you miss the good old days when sports were just about the game? If you want to go back to sports being unifying again, tune in every week where we'll expose and discuss how the left is growing in sports. My name is Jon Root, and this is Breakaway.
Do you like guns? Do you like ammo? Do you like suppressors? Do you like freedom? Do you love America? Do you like baseball? Do you like rifles? Do you like 9mm? Do you like pistols? Join me, Paige Rue, every week on Reloaded.
Critical race theory is the most racist thing that is being spread in popular life in America.
Critical race theory is bigoted. It is a lie.
Racism is now being taught to our kids.
Dividing kids based on race, trying to say some are oppressors and some are oppressed is absolutely unacceptable.
CRT is racist. It is abusive. It discriminates against one's color.
It's not critical race theory. It's racism.
Hello and welcome to TPUSA HQ in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm your host, Jon Root, and for the very first time, this is TPUSA Live. So glad you're spending some time with us. Let's check out the rundown. We'll start out the show with a daily briefing, giving you some of the most noteworthy news of the day, and introduce you to our guests, including founder and CEO of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, TPUSA contributor Benny Johnson, and editor-in-chief of Breitbart News, Alex Marlow. Next, we'll keep the conversation going, talking about President Biden's address that clearly had tyrannical undertones. Then we'll discuss the 20th anniversary of 9/11, detailing how America honored the fallen, and tell you all about the outrageous comparison President George W. Bush included in his speech. You definitely don't want to miss our chat about what is a culture war. Our guest and I will break down what it is, why it's worth fighting for, and how we can win. Before we wrap up the show, I'll give you details about a campus crazy situation at Michigan Tech where a student verbally and physically attacked TPUSA chapter members, followed by one last thing. Finally, the wait is over. I hope you're ready. TPUSA Live from HQ starts now.
Authentic, unfiltered, grassroots content and conversation every weekday. Live from Phoenix, Arizona at the Turning Point USA headquarters, this is TPUSA Live.
Well, welcome to TPUSA Live.
Here we are.
It's finally happening. This is hour 2. We got incredible guests here. And before we get into the daily briefing, the most noteworthy news of the day, we got founder and CEO of Turning Point USA, also the reason this is happening. And you also host a little podcast called The Charlie Kirk Show. Charlie Kirk, welcome to the show.
John, great to be here. And this has been a long time coming, a lot of planning. So you've done a great job getting it ready. This is gonna really help the movement in a lot of different ways.
I completely agree. So glad that you're here. Benny Johnson, TPUSA contributor, also the host of the Bennett Report on Newsmax. And I've heard you're a meme master, too. That's what people are saying about you, but we're so excited you're here.
Meme lord.
Excuse me.
And also, don't gender, you know. Don't assume the gender of the meme.
His pronouns is His Majesty.
Oh. Yeah. My pronouns are dank and meme.
Well, Dank and Meme, we are so glad you're here. What a dream. And then also, we got Editor-in-Chief of Breitbart News, Alex Marlow. Welcome to the show. It's so glad you're here. You're also a New York Times best-selling author. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this is the book Breaking the News. Thanks so much for letting me plug it. Congrats to Charlie and to you, John, on the new launch. It sounds amazing, and I'm thrilled to be here on day one. I wrote this book for 2 reasons. I wanted it to be sort of the definitive summation of all the fake news during the Trump era, which was impossible as it turned out. That would have been 2,000 pages long, at least. But it accomplished that. But I think the most important thing, and I think this will be a theme throughout some of our topics today, is it explains how the news isn't what you just see on the page or what you see on the screen. You have to look at who's funding it, when they bought it, what their direct interests are, and the interests of their shareholders. And that really is the story that this tells. I think it advances the narrative beyond this is fake news or this is real news to this is corporatized news. And it's really a opening salvo at the establishment media.
Yeah. And then speaking of the news, we got to get into the daily briefing, some of the most noteworthy news of the day. So here we have out of Texas. Texas just keeps winning. They just keep doing everything right. So a new Texas law requires pro teams to play the national anthem. So Mavericks owner Mark Cuban tried to stop his team from playing the national anthem, and his choice caused a ton of backlash. But this new law went into place this month that requires all sports teams to play the national anthem or repay any government money received. Charlie, what do you think?
I love it. I mean, I'd like to see, actually I've got to meet Mark Cuban. Were you there when we did that whole Mark Cuban?
It was so cool.
You were there, right?
Yeah.
Were you there, Alex, when that whole thing happened? When
I wasn't. I've interviewed Mark a number of times.
You have?
He's an interesting guy, yeah.
Yeah, he was kind of just unexpectedly accessible, but he's become super woke in recent years. Like, he used to kind of be this like free thinking, at least some fair kind of aspiring entrepreneur. Now he's just become kind of boring. Just kind of like hates the country, hates white people, which I don't quite understand how he squares. So I love it. I mean, Texas is awesome.
No, what's not boring is this next photo we got to show you. It almost feels like episode of Punk'd. I don't know where Ashton Kutcher is in this photo at all, but in Shanksville, PA, where former President George W. Bush gave his 9/11 address at the United 93 Memorial, these kids took a photo with President Joe Biden, and it is incredible. It's beautiful. And as you can see, in that photo that all these kids are kind of trolling President Biden. It's kind of funny. It's almost like he doesn't notice what they're wearing. Like he doesn't understand what's happening.
There's a lot Joe Biden doesn't notice, and honestly. So I look at this photo and I think President Joe Biden is probably saying, "Where's my oatmeal? Where's my warm applesauce? My applesauce wasn't warm enough today. The sparrows, they speak to me. I love to feed the sparrows. When will I have snuggle time with my favorite pillow? Well, hopefully a My Pillow."
I don't think Joe Biden uses My Pillow. Promo code Kirk, by the way.
Shameless plug.
I don't.
Good setup.
I
Very
think,
nice. All right.
I don't think that's
you
what
can
he's
tell we've
thinking
been
about
working
at all,
together.
though. He does have his hand around that girl, it looks like, and I know that it's.
That was creepy, by the way.
It's creepy. It looks
Like
like
he gets like a.
He's got the oldest girl of the group, and he's squeezing her, and he's pulling
Where's
her
his
in.
handlers, though? Where's the advance team?
Who's stopping him from this? And no one's wearing masks. So
Hey, the only handle that's going on in this is Joe Biden's hand going on the handle of like the side of the young girl.
And also, isn't with the left's logic, aren't they jeopardizing the safety of the American president with those kids, those rascals without their masks on? Isn't that the implication?
You know what? They were probably unvaccinated. How dare he?
They weren't masking for sure.
He commingled amongst the unwashed.
They weren't masking. By the way, did you see Joe Biden? How he like at the actual 9/11 ceremony, he goes doddering over like an old cancerous bag of like potatoes and just like yanks down his mask and starts screaming at an old woman. Right? He pulls down. This is when he got booed. So President Biden wanders away from his handlers. You can hear like 20 people have heart attacks on his team. And then he yanks off his mask and starts just yelling at an old woman who is in the vulnerable population, right?
As we wrap this up, too, the most savage thing was what President Trump had to say. These kids tricked President Biden just like the Taliban did. But we're going to be right back. See you soon.
In these United States of America, this great country of ours, we American Indians, we can be anything we want to be, except American Indians.
A lot of the soldiers were very aggressive, so the women did get raped.
What we call huelte. Huelte means a place of suffering, dying, starvation, nothing good. Just like Nazi concentration camps.
I didn't realize how corrupt things were. I didn't realize what kind of environment we were living in.
We had no running water. We had no power.
They de-incentivize people from, opportunity.
That's why our suicide rate has climbed up astronomical rates.
I moved from the poorest county in America, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, to the richest area in the country, the Navajo Indian Reservation. There is no difference. The poorest and richest reservations in our nation suffer from identical problems. This is not anything new. This is an everyday occurrence in all tribal governments.
So my life and my tale and my truth has been to fight socialism, and I'm hoping that I can wake up as many Navajos as I can to tell them that you can do this, even if I have to fight you to save you. And I think that's what I'm also projecting to my people. Even though they are so harsh on social media and they completely hammer at me, I tell them, I'll be here even if I have to fight you to save you.
Well, welcome back to TPUSA Live in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. Got Alex Marlow, Benny Johnson, Charlie Kirk. We are talking about the address that President Joe Biden gave on Thursday. Obviously talking about COVID, the unvaccinated, vaccinated. We have to show this video here, and then we'll give you our reaction.
Lipstick is red, woke.
And more people got their first shot in August than they did in July. But we need to do more. This is not about freedom for personal choice. It's about protecting yourself and those
I don't
around
even
you.
need to hear the clip. I know what he's saying.
The people you work with, the people you care about, the people you love. My job as president is to protect all Americans. So tonight, I'm announcing that the Department of Labor is developing an emergency rule to require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated or show a negative.
So probably the craziest part was maybe listening to you guys.
Well, because we can't hear the
scenes.
audio, but we listened to it earlier, but we knew exactly what he was saying.
The unvaccinated need to have their porridge. Okay, and make sure you hit nap time 2 o'clock, kiddo. Good job.
Yeah, I'm amazed we all stayed awake for that, those whole 40 seconds. But I think the craziest part about this whole statement here is saying it's not about freedom. It's not about personal choice.
Yeah,
we live in America.
He's trolling. His polls are in the 30s, and he knows a lot of that is because of what's going on in Afghanistan and the open border and the Bidenflation, as we call it at Breitbart. And the problems in the country, gas over $5 in a lot of places. Kids are masked up still, even though so many people are vaccinated. America is not that fun right now, and it's reflected in Joe Biden's polls. That's why he wants to talk about this. He's looked at the polls. He thinks at worst case for him, it divides the country. Best case, more of the country's with him on this. And that's what the polling they probably have shows it. And we're getting trolled a little bit. That's why he talks about our freedom, us losing our freedom. It is specifically so the talk radio, the commentary, we talk about that and not about all the other horrible things Biden's doing.
Yeah, and it's not even like undertones that are tyrannical. Like, it's just straight tyrannical. That's what you feel when you're watching something like this. It's just like, well, I'll allow you to do this. It's like dangling the carrot once again, and then shaming people once again.
Yeah, Alex just made a really brilliant point, which is that they realize that if they use our language, then we're going to take the bait, and it's not even bad on us for taking the bait. We should call out a president when they say personal liberty is irrelevant. But they realize there's only so much bandwidth that can attack Joe Biden, right? So they're trying to seal off the current rather effective attack vectors, which are Americans stranded in Kabul, Taliban taken over, $85 billion of weapons abandoned, Chinese are going to take Taiwan by December, and Joe Biden realized that's
President
not.
Joe Biden,
President Joe Biden realizes.
And how about the FOIA the Intercept got that shows that Anthony Fauci is potentially a literal Dr. Frankenstein?
That's
he's
right.
responsible
The gain of function
for
research.
the gain of function research that literally could have possibly led to this pandemic. And we don't have time to talk about that because we're talking about whatever Joe's throwing out there.
Well, I mean, and Joe's using the kind of the public appearance of fear in his own to his own advantage, but the polls don't even show that what he's doing is that popular. I mean, vast majority of Americans are against vaccine mandates, and they're going to hit this point where most of the unvaccinated, as if it's unwashed. By the way, you're born unvaccinated. It's a kind of like the natural state.
Do you have to start yelling like unclean everywhere you go to?
I'm a member of the unwashed, and
we can tell. We see your hair.
Thank you. Very.
And here's a coincidence. I mean, as far as we know, Corn Pop, unvaccinated. Where's he been in all this? He's probably dead.
That's exactly right.
That is the real question.
That's been the real problem.
And I found Corn Pop.
The thing is, the only way you can tell if you're properly vaccinated is if your hair turns blonde in the sun, your leg hair, okay? I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. Corn Pop didn't like that, so he didn't get vaccinated.
But I think the way, moving on from Corn Pop and going into some more
segment.
Really? I missed the Corn Pop. They put that on your script.
I want to say really quickly in the clip you just played, he said, I'm the president for all Americans. It's my job to be the president and to protect all Americans while hundreds, maybe thousands of Americans are trapped in Afghanistan in a slave terror state that he created.
A super state.
They're literal hostages right now.
That's right.
Yeah, and he said in that clip, it's my job to protect all Americans. What?
Meanwhile, he's bringing.
This is why you're right. He's trolling. You're right.
He's bringing unvaccinated, which I don't really care, obviously, Afghans to America. I care the fact that they're Afghans. I couldn't care less about their vaccination status to America. And then he's supposed to believe that he's prioritizing. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm prioritizing, the American people first. This is all they really have. I mean, if you kind of divide into it, the only issue that Joe Biden was significantly more popular on than Donald Trump this last election. Well, there was two, which was like, is he going to be presidential, whatever that stupid thing was, and was COVID, was the Fauci virus.
And here's an important point. And if you look at the border as a perfect example. Unvaccinated people can come through the border with coronavirus. We don't even have to know who they are. If Joe Biden was trying to get people vaccinated, he would not be approaching it this way. Approaching it as a totalitarian, allowing the hypocrisy to take place at the border, him trying to do it with fiat, with intimidation, with bullying, that's not going to get unvaccinated people vaccinated at this point, which begs the question, does he really want us vaccinated, or does he want this talking point?
Well, I think the way that you responded on Fox and Friends is something that everybody needs to see. We're going to show you on the screen right now, too. It's like, this is how every owner of a business should be responding when you hear stuff like this.
Some of our employees have made the decision to get vaccinated, but guess what? I don't ask and I don't care. It's none of my business. That's their own personal medical decision to do it. And as an employer, I will fight for the freedom of my employees to be able to make the decisions that they need to make, regardless of what my own opinions are. And more importantly, the federal government has no business whatsoever to tell us what we can do with the liberty to employ our own employees. So yes, we will go to federal court if necessary, but we're waiting to see OSHA's next move.
And I feel like this is how people should be responding.
Thank you.
No, and
yeah,
I feel like you did a
great
great
say
job
about that. It's like, it's none of my business as an employer. You think I go around and ask people their intimate medical history? Of course
I haven't
not.
heard it.
No, I mean, first of all, there's HIPAA laws, and it's just immoral. And so the point, though, is that now, in this weird course of events, the founders established government to try to protect our natural rights obviously against a tyrannical regime or anyone getting in the way of it. Now, in a weird turn of events, employers now have to protect their employees' natural rights against the government, because the government now wants to come into private business and do that. It's all about choice. If you want to get vaccinated, terrific. If not, I will defend you with everything I possibly can. And that's also why so many people want to work here.
Yeah, and then you were talking about, obviously, Afghans coming across the border and also our southern border. Like, we're talking about this is not an America First administration at all. Like, it's just these people at the border or anybody coming over from Afghanistan, do whatever the heck you want, we'll take care of you. But Americans, if you are the 101st employee at one of these places, sorry.
To connect a few things we've talked about, if you look at the way Joe Biden demonizes Americans, if you look at the way George W. Bush was President George W. Bush was demonizing Americans over the weekend on 9/11. If you look at the way the media demonizes Americans, they want to connect everything all weekend, connecting 9/11 to January 6th. And then you connect it with the story we talked about at the top with Texas, how they have to demand you play our national anthem. The left in this country does not like this country. And they haven't for a long time. I think it's finally going mainstream that conservatives are understanding that the left does not like America. They're actively rooting against it at this point.
And then final word too, it's like, Benny, how do you think people should be responding to something like this and pushing back, not only on social media, but making sure we're having conversations like this, because we need to call this stuff out and we need to talk about it.
Yeah, so if you lose bodily autonomy, you're a slave.
That's exactly right.
It's okay to say that, because
that's
what slavery is. It's that you don't control your own body. You have no rights over it. Someone else has the right over your body. Now, let's establish something really important. This idea that we have rights from God and that our body is our own, that actually comes from God and is quite new. It's actually relatively new. Go back to Moses' time. Like, Pharaoh says, kill all the kids. There's someone who might threaten my rule, kill all the children. What were the Israelites saying? That's against my natural rights. You can't do that. I'm going to sue you. No, he just went and killed the kids. Same thing in the time of Christ. Herod goes, kill all the kids. What did Mary and Joseph say? You can't do that. I'm going to get the ACLU to sue Herod. No. They all said, kill the kids. Like, I am the ultimate ruler. You are my slaves. You have no property. You are my property, including your very life. So the air you breathe, I control. I own. And so now you're seeing the left return to a world where even with our own children in school, they want to control the air our children breathes. Again, what goes into our body?
And I think that's the best
slavery.
That's the best way to end it. You alluded to what's going on at 9/11. We had the anniversary. We're going to talk about that next.
Faces turn blue, cinnamon rolls are queens. I've got pop culture for you. All the juicy, wormy, newsworthy 411 is coming to you every single day on Poplitics at its new home, TPUSA Live. It's like Barbie's dream house, but bigger and pinker.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism.
questions.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We got Alex Marlow, Benny Johnson, Charlie Kirk. And before we get going talking about the 20th anniversary of 9/11, a lot of people online are talking about this guy here, the eagle. A lot of people want to know what the pronouns of our eagle.
This was a wedding gift to Erica and I. We are so
beautiful
happy
gift.
to have it here. Thank you.
Do you know,
I don't know what the pronouns are though.
We've discussed, and I think we're going with free and dumb. So there's your dumb joke of the day. Let's freedom. There it is. All right,
John,
Benny. I'm trying to make
phenomenal.
you proud, man. I'm so sorry. You know how nervous I get around.
Is this tall enough for me to jump off myself?
No.
But now let's talk about man, what a tough transition. Now let's talk about the 20th anniversary of 9/11. But if we're getting into that, that was a time where we wanted to come together and unify.
Yeah.
And this has a great chance. We're talking about President George W. Bush. He gave a speech. We have President Trump. A lot of people are looking to presidents. They're looking to sports as well. I know sports did a great job. I know the Army football, you shared that on your social media, Benny, but every single one of the Army football players came out with American flag.
Should be like that every game.
Yeah, and I think it's a beautiful
Stanford,
thing.
to their credit, they always come out with a flag, believe it or not.
Stanford does a great job.
And then they burn it in the middle of the field.
Well, I was going to say,
that's great.
Well, I mean, the football team, I think, is a little bit, but yeah, I mean, exactly. They meanwhile, they're doing the most anti-American institution besides Berkeley in the Bay Area. Well, that's not totally true. But yeah.
But another great one, too, is at the Pittsburgh Pirates game. Families of heroes from United 93 were honored, and then the Yankees and Mets came together for the Subway Series, and they locked arms with FDNY, NYPD. So sports, we looked at sports 20 years ago. We looked at sports now. I think they did a pretty good job there. But this is when we moved to President George W. Bush. He spoke in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, at the United 93 Memorial. And what does he do? When he has a great chance to unify us, divides us. Talks about certain people on one side and conflating that with what happened at 9/11 to what happened at January 6th. So he said there is violence that gathers within. And he also said within that statement, they are children of the same foul spirit, and it's our continuing duty to confront them. I think that's absolutely disgusting. On a day where we really could come together, this is what he decides to do. That's what it's almost a leftist talking point.
Well, so this is interesting to me. So why would you be so upset about him talking about Antifa that way? So, like, I'm really proud of President Bush. He talked about BLM and Antifa in those terms, and it's about time, right? Republican leadership could learn something from George W. Bush, saying the truth about Black Lives Matter and about Antifa. You know, they are foul domestic terrorists. We need to be taking this seriously. Thank you, George.
Benny, I don't want to have to break it to you, but I'm pretty sure he was talking about January 6th. I don't think he was talking about Antifa.
I think I'm with Alex on this one.
I don't think it even entered his mind. You know why? It's because the media loves to compliment anyone who takes a crap on Trump supporters. That's what they're going for, and they're all in on it. That's the whole point of the media at this point is let's all rage at Trump supporters, and you get rewarded if you do that. And so that's what he did. Of course, he blew an opportunity to unify. He's so disappointing, and it's across the board. Why didn't Joe Biden give a speech? He's supposed to be a unity guy. We were told unity, a time for healing, right? And then now he can't even speak on the 9/11 20th anniversary, probably again because he doesn't want to talk about Afghanistan.
Well, and did you notice President Bush?
Or because he doesn't know how to speak?
Yeah, I mean, President Bush didn't mention our greatest enemy, China, didn't mention the fact we gave $85 billion to the Taliban, but I saw his speech as almost this kind of realignment of America's ruling class that's now saying, no, the new war on terror is here.
Yeah.
It's against the unvaccinated, it's against Christians, it's against conservatives, it's against gun owners. That's what that entire speech was laced with. It was this kind of declaration of war on 20 years. It's like, yeah, look, we are the endless war party, but now we're going to nation build here. Like, what a concept, right? But they don't want to nation build the way we would want to. They want to like socially engineer the country.
And how many of the mostly peaceful protesters on January 6th probably serve in the armed forces because of 9/11, and now they're being lumped with the terrorists.
And they go in to go take a selfie, or in Ashley Babbitt's case, a veteran. She probably served because of 9/11, goes in, raises her head up, and Michael Byrd shoots her, and she's unarmed, and we're supposed to say we have to sit there while President George W. Bush says no, this was a realignment talk, right? So everyone has their doctrines. There's the Monroe Doctrine, there was the Roosevelt Doctrine. This is a whole new doctrine, which is that we really don't care about enemies abroad. We are going to crush our political dissidents domestically. I hope people watch very closely there.
And I think we see how the media responded to this too. The leftist media, they wanted to come out and say, hey, look what President Biden's doing. Look at what the former President Obama is doing. Look what former President Clinton's doing. They're actually honoring people at 9/11, the memorial there in New York. Like, look at this tweet too. They're trying to say, hey, where is President Trump? And their narrative totally fails. So it says, former President Trump absent from the 20th anniversary of 9/11 ceremony in his own city. And then right next to that, you'll see former President Trump visiting the NYPD and FDNY on the 20th anniversary of September 11th. He had a surprise visit. Like, they're trying to just troll these people, and they're trying to make people look bad, but it's just failing. It's like, look at actually what he's doing. He's talking.
And one of the reasons that I think that Biden's approval rating is so low is that they've censored President Trump to such a great degree that finally they actually kind of have to cover what's happening in the country. It's like one of the great unintended consequences of deleting him from every major platform. It's like, oh wait, now people actually are going to talk about how awful of a country it is to live.
Yeah, and you've also ratcheted up the amount of people that are interested in the presidency and what is happening inside of that branch, which was kind of asleep for the last 4. Am I wrong? Like,
with Obama,
like just in a sleep. Obama sort of ramped it up.
President Obama.
You could go weeks. we all follow the news very closely. You could go weeks without really hearing a bombshell story out of the White House. Months even. It was like a snooze fest. People were on vacation. George H.W. Bush, like, on vacation, right? Like, you really didn't hear that much. And now it's an everyday grind. And so they are forced to cover Biden every single day. You're right. It's a trap.
Yeah, and then President Biden, obviously, like, what he's doing, we're going to talk about the culture war. President Biden. Tons of respect. We're going to talk about the culture war. What is it? What we can do to win. See you in a few minutes.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
Do you miss the good old days when sports were just about the game? If you want to go back to sports being unifying again, tune in every week where we'll expose and discuss how the left is ruining sports. My name is Jon Root, and this is Breakaway.
Do you like guns? Do you like ammo? Do you like suppressors? Do you like freedom? Do you love America? Do you like baseball? Do you like rifles? Do you like 9mm? Do you like pistols? Join me, Paige Rue, every week on Reloaded.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live.
If only people could hear the break conversation.
It's all about her hair.
It's gonna be a more popular show.
No, we got to bring this in right here, right now.
It's all
I've been up since 3:30 in the morning. Okay, I know that sounds early, but Alex gets up at 2.
Yeah, I do. I get up at 2. That's true.
Can you beat that, Benny?
Yeah.
You get up at 2 a.m.?
Yeah,
because he does it.
If I'm prepared for my radio show, then I'll sleep until 2:21.
Goodness.
Because he does a 3 a.m. radio show every day.
Which
I think is insane.
Yeah.
Sirius XM
I'm really glad I get to
125.
do this in the afternoon.
It's a phenomenal show.
Thank you.
It really is great.
Appreciate
The
that.
time is murderous.
That is true.
But it's a great news rundown. It's really good. If people get Sirius XM 125, they do a great job.
Thank you for the plug.
And now we got that plug in
it's
there.
also murderous. Joe Biden.
President Joe Biden. But we got to talk about the culture war. Everything we're talking about.
Disavow.
This is all about a culture war. You talk about it quite a bit. So things that are happening right now, American history and freedom of speech are under attack. Students are being indoctrinated in schools, and also Americans are finding hope and value in things that really just don't last. We feel like that's why this show is happening. The 3 hours of TPUSA Live, we're fighting back and trying to win the culture war. So, Benny, could you explain what the culture war is a little bit? And anybody feel free to jump in there and kind of how you fight back yourself.
The culture war for me, and people are going to have different opinions here. You should probably talk to the guy who founded Turning Point about that. My opinion is it's the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. So what story are you telling yourself about your own culture? You can see this time and time again throughout history. It is the most predictable thing. Cultures that stop believing in themselves collapse. That generation gone. And so the stories you tell yourself, and what I've tried to do here at Turning Point is to tell a story that will affect people, a positive story about our country and also a negative story about the things we're fighting. But these ideologies, and the one thing they all have in common that are eating at the core of what it means to be an American is hatred for this country. I think for the first time in this country's history, we're led by people that actually hate this country, that don't love this country. And if you don't love something, how is that going to work out? If you don't love a plant in your house, well, it's going to be a water stain really soon. And so, you want to make sure the water stains don't get to the Oval Office. And so you tell a positive story about yourself. That's the culture war for me.
Charlie, how would you explain the culture war and what we can do to fight
Yeah, I
back?
think that's wise. I think that we have cultural and historic amnesia. No one really knows who they are anymore. And when you've dealt with people that have that in the actual medical condition sense, it's very serious. And so you kind of have this Nietzschean dilemma where all of a sudden half the country thinks they have to recreate their own values. It's like, I'm going to go chart my own course and my own destiny. You kind of hear this implied in a lot of the garbage corporatist messaging, right? Like, go buy an Apple computer because you can go be a social revolutionary too, or you kind of see that in a lot of the advertisement. When in reality, things that come before us can be incredibly instructive on how to live your life. And the thing that is the through line is your nation. It's the country. It's what came before you. Is this a place that's decent to live? And you actually don't have to overthink this. I think the conservative movement has been far too wonky on behalf of corporate interests. It's just, is this an enjoyable place to live? And all of us are going to be fine, right? But for most people, it's kind of not right now. Their kids have to wear masks. They're going into debt. Things are getting more expensive. There's no guarantee that their kids are going to live a better life. Crime is going up. I was just in California, which I felt like I was in a third world country. I mean, you live there, Alex. It's not an exaggeration.
Homelessness, fires, traffic, illegal immigration, unusable schools, and some of the highest taxes in the country. What more could you want?
Yeah, it's just not.
What a dream.
It's just not a pleasant place to exist. And I spent some time in Beverly Hills because obviously I know some people that are in the income ladder there. But they've designed their own enjoyable way to live, right?
Yeah.
Gated communities, chauffeured cars, helicopters if necessary.
Like in a third world country.
No, of course. And that's
Right.
the point, is that like no one talks about how wonderful Brazil is. Instead, they say, oh yeah, Brazil is great, but don't go after dark. Don't go out after dark. Bulletproof cars, at least 10 people security, only go to these 10 hotels, and 10 places, and then you'll have a nice time. Yeah. And I don't want to live in that country, quite honestly. And that's what we're doing here at Turning Point USA. It's not a political movement. It's not at all. It's educational and cultural. And it's a super important identity question, which is, who are we? And that's fundamental.
It's who are we, and then who are we fighting? I feel like a lot of people want to know that too. It's like, this is not just some invisible entity that we're just like, oh, what is it? It's like, no, there's actual people out there in groups that we are fighting against.
Neo-Marxist postmodernists.
So I know Benny's close, but I think I'm the elder statesman in the culture war here, having been at Breitbart my whole adult life.
Andrew.
And it worked for Andrew Breitbart, was hired by Andrew Breitbart. And I want to give a positive report that I think we're doing really well in the culture wars on the right. I think that we are much funnier, which has always been the case, but no one knew about it. I think we have a much better time. I think that we're better looking. I think that there's a lot of positive stuff. We've neutralized the media. So it's hard to beat the media because of the corporations. I'll get to that in a second. We've neutralized Hollywood. Hollywood's a joke now. The only thing that's not a joke is how they've all sold out to China, which is a major issue. But Hollywood's just not the center of the culture anymore. It's kind of cringy and mockable. And I think they know it, which is really fun. But then there are new battlefields, the sports world now, that they've gone woke, which is a huge disappointment as a lifelong sports fan, that I have to be distracted from sports and I can't enjoy it as much. And most importantly, the corporations. In the corporations right now, getting woke, making it so that if you don't conform to their lack of individuality desires within the corporation, then you can't have a good life there. That's very troubling and is something we need to fight back on. But this is the whole point, is that we need to keep adjusting our tactics as the battlefield shifts. And this is a big reason why I wrote the book. I know we were going to talk about Dr. Fauci, who's getting a documentary in National Geographic. National Geographic, I thought we were supposed to learn about the ancient Aboriginal tribes and what their dwellings were. No, it's what a great guy Fauci is, the guy who maybe is the Frankenstein of the Wuhan virus. I mean, you have to think about it, though. National Geographic, it's not about National Geographic, it's Disney. It's Disney. It's China-ized Disney. Disney owns 3/4 of the company. That's the lesson.
Well, and I just want to expand on that. So what does success look like? It's very simple. We want more people in our generation to love the country than hate the country. That's called sustainable. Right now it's upside down. Right now it's 61%, it's upside down, and that's a problem. And so you can have one generation that's an aberration and then it has to self-correct. Millennials, kind of that ship has sailed in some ways, but now it's really kind of this question of Generation Z and the rest of the nation. And so, but yeah, look, I agree. The good news about the culture war is that when I speak to audiences, I mean, I'm 27, Benny, you've been in this for longer than I have. Remember when we used to speak at these events, we used to talk about tax cuts? We used to talk, you kind of have those big charts and graphs, like, oh, look at all this. Now people are dialed in and are like, what do I do? Who do I take out? Who do I displace from power? That's what this is. And the left's been fighting it for 60 years. I think we've just started to fight.
Well, because we have to know it's a battlefield. I mean, that's what makes it so uncomfortable. I feel like we just went through a crazy pandemic and everyone feels like we're talking about death all the time. We're talking about divisive politics. And then now it's like the culture war is at your doorstep. It's in your workplace.
Yes.
It's at your school. It's absolutely everywhere. Obviously, we feel like we're like a mecca here, and there's a place where we can talk about all this stuff, which is beautiful, and a reason why we have. It's a reason why we have this show. But like,
let me offer the smallest bit of insight from what people love at Breitbart.com. The two hottest types of traffic that we get is, and this is, I know I'm giving away some of the secret sauce, but I think it's important. Number one is be Donald Trump. That's the best way to get traffic. The number two thing is to fight back against the left every time, whether you're a person, a school board, or your Governor DeSantis or Governor Abbott, whoever's fighting the left wins. That's what people want. People are chomping at the bit for that content.
Yep. And then I feel like a lot of what you're doing too, Benny, is, I mean, the meme lord, excuse me, let me bow down for that, but
Thank you.
It's connecting with young people too. It's
Proper
like, how do you win the
pronouns.
culture war? You got to start making fun of these things. You need to start having a laugh, and we need to start pushing this stuff out on social media
Greg
too.
Gutfeld is now the king of late night.
Yeah.
That's all you need to say.
Yeah.
Like, he has defeated 40 years. A 50 year, Alex, help me out here. 50 years of late night.
With less distribution, too. That's the crazy
yep.
thing, is that not everyone has those cable packages.
Yes.
I know it feels like all of us do. It's not true.
Mm-mm.
There's tens of millions of homes that don't have cable packages.
By
Like-
being what? By being what? Funny?
Yep.
Like, even just moderately funny. Just being funny.
But
Not,
he's honest.
not having,
that's the thing. Then that humor is honest.
And he's not a conformist. He's his own. His take is always interesting. You're never. You can't predict it all the time. Which is, you know exactly what Kimmel and Colbert are going to say every single night.
This is why when you're a postmodernist and a relativist, you become unfunny. Because suddenly making a joke, which is founded in truth, right? A priest, a minister, and a rabbi walk into a bar. You laughed. I didn't even tell you a punchline.
Right.
You laughed
Well, you
because
laughed
there's
because
a...
you called Alex a rabbi.
Well,
And then also
I always call him rabbi. Bless my child.
Sorry to cut you off, but like, I think what we have boots on the ground at a lot of these high schools and colleges, specifically TPUSA chapters that are doing amazing things to fight back on the.
You have to hear the
war.
end of the joke coming back.
Guys, the
After
rabbi
that, we'll
joke
hear
is
about
gonna
the
kill.
joke. We'll see you in a few minutes.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country is very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for life, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
Conservative students are considered threats to American universities, but they won't stand down any longer. Join me, Isabel Brown, every week as I meet the bold student warriors who are fearlessly fighting to stop their leftist professors and peers from destroying their campuses. This is On the Front Lines with Turning Point USA.
What's up, guys? My name is Jon Root, and every week I'm breaking down the top stories in sports and bringing you conversations you won't hear anywhere else. It's gonna be a great time here on Breaking.
TPUSA Live is about to be spicy. I mean, would you expect anything less? It's me, Alex Clark. Of course it's gonna be spicy. Tune into The Spillover, my brand new podcast. Think of it like the older sister to Poplitics with a lot more conservative. Big dog status, I'm a big dog vet. I pull up on the block in a big Corvette.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. Before we get into some of this campus crazy stuff that happened at Michigan Tech, Benny, I cut you off. You know, I'm so sorry. There was commercial breaks coming.
Make us laugh, Benny.
Come on, I'm ready to laugh.
I got canceled. I didn't know you were Jewish, and so you just had to tell me. I didn't know I offended you. I am so sorry.
Oh, dude, and now we're just spreading lies.
I'm so sorry.
I'm not Jewish.
Who's the rabbi?
Beautiful beard.
Wow. Gosh, I feel good.
Postmodernists don't have any truth. Their truth is relative. Their truth is what's told to them by the authorities, and that's why Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, and everyone looks like they're reading off a script. Because what they can make fun of that specific day is told to them. And that's not comedy. The reason why everyone laughs is that there's a nugget of truth in a priest, a minister, and a rabbi joke. We've all engaged with one of those, or maybe all of those religious figures, and there are truths and stereotypes about them. And we laugh at that because laughter actually softens the blows of culture, softens the blows of history, and it makes us like each other. It's a chemical reaction that happens when you laugh, and it makes you like the people around you. We've studied this in science. And so the left is so uncaring and so unfunny and so sad, and they seem to be getting more miserable. The reason why? They forgot how to laugh. Because they're all postmodernist relativists.
And I think we're going to see one of those right here when we show you this video that happened at Michigan Tech. And we're going to laugh too, because we want to hear your reaction to this, Benny. So this is what happened at Michigan Tech when this crazy leftist student came up to a Turning Point USA chapter table.
Back it up. Hey, stop touching our stuff. Fascists are not welcome on this campus. You are acting like a fascist. You are literally being a fascist. So get lost.
Well, the double fist, I just think of Arthur just like, it's just like.
First, all right, let's go. Let's do gambling pool. Man or woman?
I'm not going to answer.
It was actually the first time I wanted someone to declare their pronouns because I didn't get it. I couldn't see. I couldn't have guessed.
Again, I think it's a half burqa that this person's wearing. Did you see the bottom? It's
a long dress.
It's a long black dress.
I think there's at least two masks.
Tunic. Well, there are two. Yeah.
It was
no doubt.
Let me just say,
mask, though.
Our Turning Point kids and staff handled that brilliantly.
Yeah,
they really
That's
did.
right.
Like, get out, you fascist!
Yeah, you're the fascist.
And all of a sudden,
you are.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, that clip, if you replay it, that's how we have to handle every single leftist across the country. They come and like, what's their big like flex? I'm gonna like overdo your card table. Like, get out. Like if you really want to do this, and I just fix the bag every time.
And your students have been doing this forever. I have an example of it that I wrote about in Breaking the News that of course the media doesn't portray, right? The media lied about at the time, but there was one, I think in Arizona a couple of years ago where there was a huge level of harassment on some of your students.
Yes.
And they all took it like champs, and the media lied about the students, not the fascists harassing them. And that's fine, though. It's energizing. That's happened to me in the Berkeley campus when I was there 15 years ago. It'll happen to you if your students out there, and it's kind of fun. It just shows you're pissing off the worst people on the planet.
As long as it stays relatively safe, it's fine.
And like you were saying, too, the way...
Well, she had the mask on. So
what is a she?
I don't know. Just wild guess. They had the mask on.
We don't want to assume one's gender. There's only two of them, by the way.
But going back to the way the students reacted to, we live in an age where things are just going to go viral. So our students could have easily pushed back, said something that was unsavory, and that's all that would have gotten clipped.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think that's where every single one of your leadership comes in, because people are going to look to you guys. How do we respond?
Non-binary burqa wearer hospitalized by, I could just see the headline.
Yeah. Half burqa.
Half burqa.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. But this is what fascism is, right? This is fascistic behavior, definitionally fascistic behavior, and it only ever goes one way. And so it's good on those kids. What a bunch of based kids to like call them out to their face, say exactly what's happening.
You know what I was thinking about? I was thinking about how if I said that person was worse than the Taliban, how absurd it would sound. Yeah, that's what happens on CNN every night.
Day.
Every night about January 6th.
Exactly well, no, I just want you to imagine if if all of a sudden that would have been a conservative President Trump supporting MAGA hat wearer.
Right.
And that would have been like the Black Student Union, and they just would have come and just thrown the table over. It would have been we would have to be apologizing for it as conservatives.
What if there was a black person running for office and a gorilla threw an egg at the black person?
Do you know what it would have been? They would have had a moment of silence at the NFL games this
That's exactly right.
I'm not kidding.
That's 100% correct.
They would have taken a knee. And ladies and gentlemen, please take a knee for the unconscionable events that just took place.
Yes.
For
this is not who we are as a people.
And the Pittsburgh Steelers, as an organization, would like to announce that this is not who we are.
We are all putting an egg inside of our helmet for this game.
That's right.
In protest.
And we will end racism together.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's called institutional power, by the way. Forcing people to do that, that's institutional power.
That's right.
When you say that the right has lost institutional power, that's what Alex is talking about. That's what you're talking about.
Yes.
We can't force the Steelers to do that. That's what should have happened.
I don't think it should have happened. But under these rules, it
should have been a bigger story.
Under these, you're right.
That image.
Do I want Ben Roethlisberger to take a knee for some gorilla hat wearing? Is Ben Roethlisberger still the quarterback of the Steelers?
He's still the quarterback. I would say just beat the Bills and keep winning football games. That's it.
That's right. The Bills lost, right?
Bills lost, yeah.
Yeah. See, I watched the NFL until they played the Black National Anthem. I said, "You're all a bunch of bigots." I'm done.
But to wrap this up, too, with just about a minute left, we have students that are going through so much crazy stuff on campus continuously. And you have these students that are out here tabling, and they're putting their neck out there, too. They know when they table, and it says Turning Point on there, that they are about to be under attack. And we always want everybody watching this and everyone that follows Turning Point to know that, those are some of the real heroes out there. Those are the boots on the ground. We talk about culture war and how it's a battlefield. There's kids out there. Luckily, we get to just relax here and talk about this stuff on a couch. But there's kids that are just pushing back and putting their neck out on the line because it is a tough place to be where they're pushing vaccine mandates. Luckily, you can get together on a Saturday and watch your football team. And
but we're not just all sitting here. You can, if that's the best part about these couches right here, is that you can go to Breitbart and get your story amplified. You can go to the Charlie Kirk podcast and get your story amplified. At Turning Point, we will happily meme these kids, and you have people have your back. We got your back.
Coming up next, we got one last thing. You guys aren't going to miss this. See you soon.
Do you like guns? Do you like ammo? Do you like suppressors? Do you like freedom? Do you love America? Do you like baseball? Do you like rifles? Do you like 9mm? Do you like pistols? Join me, Paige Rue, every week on Reloaded.
We are in a culture war for the future of America, and so far the left has been winning. But I've got good news for you. Conservative students are fighting back. Join me, Isabel Brown, every week as we meet the compelling student activists changing the future of our country. Thanks to Turning Point USA, we are on the front lines.
What's up, guys? My name is Jon Root, and every week I'm breaking down the top stories in sports and bringing you conversations you won't hear anywhere else. It's going to be a great time here on Breaking.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country's very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for drive, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
Lipstick is red, woke faces turn blue, cinnamon rolls are queens, I've got pop culture for you. All the juicy, wormy, newsworthy 411 is coming to you every single day on Poplitics at its new home, TPUSA Live. It's like Barbie's dream house, but bigger and pinker.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. It's time for one last thing, maybe the most important news of the day. So the Miami Hurricanes took on Appalachian State, and it was a great game on the field, but what was happening in the upper deck was life or death. Check it out.
What?
The cat, we are
Cat's
being
alive.
told the cat is okay. It used one of its 9 lives, obviously.
Yes.
But I have no idea how that cat got there. But honestly, I'm so glad we're showing clips like this because this is what the news that we need to know
Well, the
about.
most important
Maybe the
part
most
is
important.
the American flag caught the cat.
Amen to that.
That's right.
Maybe it wasn't the greatest catch. It was a little bit fumbly, but you saw at the end, look at it, everybody just went crazy.
The best argument against flag burning that I think we've seen.
Let me say, first of all, cat lives matter, of course. Second of all, is that, I would just love to be a fly on the wall of the conversation with the couple who said, I think we're going to bring a mittens to the game here this week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we should bring mittens. No, trust me, what's the worst that could happen? Well, he could fall from the upper deck.
Honey, when's the last time you saw mittens?
But the question is, how did the cat get on the other side of that?
So I guess there was a banner there at the upper level. I can't believe
But
it.
aren't cats really good at being able to just kind of be able to
Not
walk?
this cat, Charlie.
And thank goodness the cat didn't have a MAGA hat on, because there's no way.
Is the cat vaccinated?
Yes, exactly. You never know. Hey, you can pass the COVID from cat to cat.
If we were in a socialist country,
Cat
that
to
would be like
pangolin?
manna raining down from heaven. That'd be different.
That's right. But if the cat's not vaccinated, then
If you were in Venezuela, if you were in Caracas, that would be like, wow.
They shouldn't have caught
If the cat wasn't vaccinated, though, he might not get hospital care, though.
They
If he
should
went
have
to the
checked his
right?
vaccination status before catching the cat.
Well, I think that's the only way you get into some of these stadiums, right? You got to show the vaccine passport.
Was the cat wearing a mask?
No.
Actually, man, we got to
hard-
zoom
it's hard
in.
to tell.
I can't believe we're
think
talking
we
about cat
what is it?
vaccinations. But in general, like what I love about that clip is we've watched college football the last couple weeks.
Yes.
And it is a beautiful representation.
So I went to the USC Stanford game after the Ducks of Oregon beat Ohio State University.
Real quick,
Go
with about
Ducks!
a minute left.
And which is like a religious experience in our family. We haven't missed a Ducks game in 15 years. And so then I went to the USC Stanford game. So they kept on giving these announcements. Ladies and gentlemen, please put on your mask. Every time they did that, people would go up and start flicking off. No one was wearing a mask. There was like one older couple that was wearing a mask. And it was amazing. In Los Angeles, at the Coliseum, no one wearing a mask. And it's like college football has kind of become the place where it's like, F Joe Biden, not wearing a mask. It's this kind of where the energy kind of is right now in kind of a strange way.
But as we wrap this thing up, thank you so much for coming on the second hour of TPUSA Live. Alex Marlow, Benny Johnson, Charlie Kirk. This has been a great show. I'm glad we could end it talking about cat vaccinations.
Everyone go buy Alex's book.
Buy that book. But also, if you want to hear more about this stuff, go to tpusa.com/live feed. Coming up next, Freedom Papers with Morgan Zegers. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
All right, welcome you guys to the first episode of Freedom Papers. I'm Morgan Zegers, I'm a contributor for Turning Point USA, and I'm here with the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, Congressman Andy Biggs, and my friend Matthew, who is from Arizona. So we're gonna get started. Now, there's a lot to discuss in episode 1. I want to just give context to everybody listening, everybody watching, because most people don't know what the Federalist Papers are, and I do because I'm a little bit of a nerd. I was really surprised because I went to college. I did communications, law, economics, and government as my major, and I think we maybe touched on Federalist Paper number 10 once in that entire experience of my 3 years to getting my bachelor's degree. And so a lot of my friends think that maybe the Federalist Papers are the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, or who knows what they are, but it's an amazing, amazing set of essays that pretty much make the case for the government and the system that we have now in America. And my favorite quote describing it is from Thomas Jefferson, 1788. He said, "The Federalist is the best commentary on the principles of government which was ever written." And so to fully understand and to get into number 1, which we're going to do today, first I want to provide some context, some background. And to really do that, you have to put yourself in the scene. So we declare independence July 4th, 1776. Things are a little chaotic, right? So we decide with the Articles of Confederation to begin that style of government. And let's just say it's a bit messy. What I read, this is John Jay, number 2, in the Federalist. He says, "They formed it almost as soon as they had a political existence, at a time when their habitations were in flames, when many of their citizens were bleeding, and when the progress of hostility and desolation left little room for those calm and mature inquiries and reflections which must ever precede the formation of a wise and well-balanced government for a free people. It is not to be wondered at that a government instituted in times so inauspicious should be on experiment, to be found greatly deficient and inadequate to the purpose it was intended to answer." And so, long story short, things were messy at the time. We had just declared independence from England, and we are going through a revolutionary war. So the system of government we set up, it was intended to bring the freedom that we really wanted. Did it do it as well as it could have been done? Absolutely not. And so what I really love, and I was talking to Matthew about this before you got here today, we were able to say as a country and as leaders, we messed up, and we need to redo this. And that's what started the next convention, the Constitutional Convention. So in 1787, we all get back together at a convention and we say, the last decade or so hasn't been our best. And we still have the same goal, but we want to get together and do something new. So we decide to write the U.S. Constitution. The problem we get into then is the U.S. Constitution isn't exactly the most popular document at the time in the country. Every state has to ratify the Constitution, and there's a few states out there like New York State, one of the biggest in the Union, they don't want to do it. And so they don't want to ratify. That brings us to where we are with the Federalist Papers. This is what I really love so much. I love a good marketing campaign. And basically, Alexander Hamilton, he was in New York City, and he said, I need to convince the people to change their mind and ratify the U.S. Constitution. So he started out with some sassy papers, and he's a little embarrassed. He gets a little humbled because he's throwing out these opinion pieces in the newspapers, and he's like, these anti-federalists, they don't know what they're talking about. They're a bunch of bad guys. They don't have good intentions. And, well, he looked like a political commentator that just yells behind a microphone these days. We have a lot of those. And so he gets a little humbled when he looks in the newspaper and he sees the anti-federalist papers, the Brutus and the Cato papers. And he's pretty embarrassed because they took it very seriously. They made very sound arguments against the ratification of the Constitution. So he says, I need to do the same. Alexander Hamilton gets John Jay and James Madison to agree to write 85 essays in favor of ratification of the Constitution, and they begin releasing them after the Constitution is written, a few days after another, one after another, releasing them to try and convince the population. And that's really where we are right now. We're going to go through every single Federalist paper because there's two sections. There's the Union and then there's the merits of this Constitution. And the papers are split between the two. The Union basically makes the case for why it's important to have one sound Union instead of a bunch of little Confederate states. The second part, the merits of the Constitution, makes the case for why the Union is, or the Constitution is the best way to protect and preserve the Union that is needed. So we're going to go through them. Now, you guys, I don't even know where to begin on this. Do you have any thoughts on what Alexander Hamilton did with this?
Yeah, can I just say jump in here, because I think you've really covered and given a great background. But one of the things to remember is that the Articles of Confederation, which we were operating on pre-Constitution, they recognized each of those 13 states as separate sovereign entities. And so if you were going from Virginia to North Carolina, for instance, you might have to pay a custom to get in there, or you might need some kind of special documentation. It really hindered. There you go. That's what I'm looking for. It really hindered the economic development of the country, and so what you had going on though is you had the people, like you were talking about New York. They liked the way New York was able to control itself, and they didn't want any overarching outside centralized power to come in and remove power from the states. And that was one of the biggest obstacles, is to get states to understand, well, you're going to be a sovereign state, you'll be a sovereign entity, but we're going to just bring in certain enumerated powers into the form of the Constitution. So when you talked about what the two aspects of the papers, what they're trying to do, they're trying to advocate for a centralization, and at the same time advocate for why this Constitution will then still protect individual and state rights. That was so critical here. And by the way, the trick here was when Madison was trying to put together the Constitutional Convention to go in, that was not what the Confederation had allowed. They said you can go in and you can make improvements to the Articles of Confederation, but you can't scrap it. They decided, and so Madison wrote a completely different Constitution. So they get there, they lay that on everybody, and then ultimately you see this Constitution come together and take shape, and now you've got mistrust of the founders who were there, because they were told you can amend this thing, but you can't scrap it and build something new. But they did. They just tossed that out and built a new one, and now they got to defend it. And I think that gets back to your point. Hamilton's like, I think he really believed that tossing a few grenades at the other side, yeah, that'll just wipe them out. We're done. We're ready to go. But it wasn't. This is very thought out, and I'm glad we're doing this. I'm glad we're doing this.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
We got to look back to how our foundation started. We just fought a war. Americans are afraid of a centralized government, and that's the whole reason. The idea of bringing the original Articles of Confederation was to decentralize government, right. To have a smaller government and have states be self-govern themselves. And it goes back to the whole idea of self-determination. Our founding fathers were clear about that, of how states should govern their own states. But then we started seeing that there was issues with that. Different states had different currencies. Now, when it came to trade, it was really hard for states to trade. And our founding fathers started realizing we need to have something that's a little bit centralized. And that's, a constitution covers all that, but it definitely hones in on that in Article 1, Section 8, where it talks about the powers of the Congress. But also, a lot of Americans at this time were, again, like what you said, they had a lot of distrust with government. And when, yes, the Constitution was founded illegally, because in the original Articles of Confederation, in order to amend or to change anything in the Articles of Confederation, it had to be unanimous. Right. It had to be voted by all 13 colonies. There were 2 states who did not vote yes on it. It was New York, and I think it was Rhode Island. And that's the whole, that is where the Federalist Papers come into play. This is the best source of support for the U.S. Constitution today, is reading back to our Federalist Papers and seeing what our founding fathers wrote. And heck, it's still being debated on today, and our legal system still goes back to the Federalist Papers. And I think it's incredibly important for students and Americans to understand what the Federalist Papers are about, and what Alexander Hamilton in Federalist 1 even spoke about, why this was written, and his concerns and grievances at this time, and how he inspired the state of New York to ratify the rest of the U.S. Constitution. So Morgan, thanks for hosting us and having us come.
I mean, I love it.
I love this too. I'm a political junkie and a little bit of a Constitution nerd, and I love this topic. And I mean, this is frankly such a beautiful thing. Our founding fathers came in together under hardship and cruel rule, and understood like what has worked in history and applied all these different puzzles into a beautiful concept of the United States of America.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country is very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for life, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
When we talk about why we do these kind of shows, there's a study from Michigan State University. It said the most effective way to talk to a young person about either an opposing viewpoint or a very hard to understand topic, like the Federalist Papers and our founding documents, it's actually via peer, not via parent or professor. Right. And so listen, our teachers, our professors, our American classrooms are not giving it to the students in the first place, but it turns out, listen, that's not even the most effective way to really change a heart and mind about a topic. It's actually conversations like this. And so we'll consider you, you're a peer to the people.
Well, thank you. I think that's the nicest thing anyone said to me today.
Right, well, so you're in politics, and I love watching the world of politics. I'm not exactly in politics myself. But that being said, I love seeing the tactics that were used. And we saw some tactics play out between the Anti-Federalists and the Federalists. And I don't know if you could maybe touch on this a little bit too, but the Anti-Federalists used to consider themselves the Federalists because they believed technically in the Federalist system of having that decentralization. It was Alexander Hamilton that said, I'm going to take that name because I like it more and it sounds more positive when we're trying to convince the people. And so what I really loved about his articles is, first of all, he takes the term the Federalist. He speaks to the people in the essays as if they are just as smart as him. He doesn't talk down to them. He says, my fellow countrymen, my fellow citizens, you deserve to understand this. You deserve to know it because it's your decision. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but he basically says this is up to us. It's on our shoulders to determine if men are capable of governing themselves in a way that is rooted in choice, not authority. And I just loved that. Speaking of language, though, you have him taking the Federalist, you have him saying countryman, citizen, we are equal. But he also plays around because the Anti-Federalist Papers, they signed off as Brutus and Cato. They were Roman people that led through the Republic. He decides to take the name Publius. And Publius. I knew I was going to mess this up. Right. He decides to take the name Publius because Publius has this great story back in these ancient times of being somebody that committed to his country, committed to the Republic of Rome, and said, I'm going to become consul, I'm going to stay here for the long run, and I'm going to see it through that this lasts for a long time, especially as the Republic expands and grows, which America basically was. And so it was just such a nice message to them to pick the story of Publius Publius to represent that. Not only that, I love paying attention to these radical, crazy lefties that we have in the country today. He also chose that, and they wanted to all write under this name Publius because they wanted it to be this guiding figure helping the American people understand. He didn't want it to be like signed Hamilton, because it would be something like Marxism. You know, and Karl Marx is this weird, obsessive man that everybody on the left, even today, looks to, and it's because everything that he wrote had his name attached to it, and they wanted to avoid that obsession with one person, and I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, you know, and what's interesting about Hamilton too, and of course they'll have a famous split later on between Hamilton, Madison, Jefferson, etc. But at the time, Hamilton was the only guy that was actually attending, because there were 3 New York delegates, the other 2 left for the Constitutional Convention. So Hamilton knew about it. But what he did is, and what you're describing is what I call narrative building. So he was building narrative. And so the narrative for him was, hey, you know what, we're the real Federalists here. Because, why? Because people were concerned about what the central government relationship would be. And so he said, well, look, you're going to still be a state sovereign, and this is the way it's going to work, and we're also going to protect your individual rights. He understood, as he was crafting the narrative, and as you read this, they understood human nature, and they understood the milieu of the world that they lived in. The world that they lived in is we were just talking about, the brutal reign of King George that had just been governing them. He understood that these people were constantly, yet concerned about that, because they felt vulnerable, you know, because you still had Great Britain. And you also had this notion of the competition between the states. You know, is South Carolina going to enlist with Great Britain so they could come back over and take? They didn't understand. They trusted, but not fully. So Hamilton and Madison, and Jay not so much because he didn't write very many of these, they understood the human nature and what was going on in the world, and they built their narrative in such a way that it resonated. And back then there was no, of course, internet or social media or anything. People read these newspapers that were delivered on the post roads and what have you. And Publius, the other thing about Publius, using that name Publius, if you didn't know what the background of Publius, you just thought, oh, public. It was related. Oh,
I like
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, somebody in the public is writing this stuff. And so it's really, really very well done. And we do it in politics today. You know, so you craft the narrative, you know the human nature, and you know the world you're living in. That's how you build it.
That's an
very
excellent
smart
point. You know, like our founding fathers had to understand human nature, and that's how they tailored themselves to the exact circumstances of its people, is by understanding human nature, human psychology, and what philosophies had worked in the past, and ideas. And this is the compilation of all those ideas into one. These lists of essays here that describe each subheading of the supporting of the Constitution, and the Constitution itself as the final result of all these ideas that have been compiled together. And you know, human nature, I think, it still plays a role today. Obviously, we're all human, and I think it's critical for elected officials like yourself to understand what yes, Americans are feeling, but what human nature is calling too.
Yeah.
And what happens when people are in fear? At this time, Americans were at fear. They were scared of a centralized government. They were afraid of change because there was conflict. They understood that things weren't being efficient as a nation in whole. There was a lot of confusion and apprehension. So when these essays started going out, you were right about it was clear, it was straightforward, and it wasn't degraded in a way that only appealed to a certain crowd. It appealed to everybody. It was calling out to all the countrymen, those in the cities, in the farms, so they could understand the reason, the personnel of their ideas into the Constitution.
Yeah.
And such a beautiful concept, and it's so creative and unique to the world.
It is. No, well, that's the thing too. When we look at back then, I mean, life was hard back then, and we live in such this like posh lifestyle now in America in 2021, and so we really can't relate. But the luxuries of today don't mean that we still have bad people out there. Like
we still have human nature.
People suck. Is like honestly, that's my opinion. And so you have to have protections for the people because whether they're people in government or people in private business, people are bad sometimes, and you have to protect from them. And so I can't remember where the quote is. It's somewhere, I think, in number 1. But it talks about how this whole system, the setup and the defense for the Constitution was that it allowed for human excellence, but it also protected against really bad actors. Without saying, you know, there's no opportunity for us to even allow freedom because everybody sucks. It at least allowed for human excellence and also allowed those protections at the same time.
Absolutely.
That being said, so let's move on into number 1, because that kind of sets the stage, right? We now have this debate over ratification. So you have the Anti-Fed papers coming out, the Federalist papers are coming out. They're getting a little sassy with each other, but they're also respectful, and that's what I really liked about seeing the language between the two, because it was kind of funny. Hamilton says something along the lines of you know, there are going to be people who have perverted ambitions, and I'm not saying it's everyone that's against the ratification, but they're out there. Some people may have good intentions for you, but I'm warning you, there's going to be some bad ones. And then when you read Anti-Federalist papers too, they go, you know, there are bad guys on the other end. Not saying that everybody's bad, but there are going to be bad guys on the other end. The situation, though, is that they're both trying to protect the independence of the people. Right. They just have two totally different views on how that happens, and so that does lead to that commonality. Right now, I always talk about the difference between a liberal and a leftist, okay? Yeah. Huge difference between a seize the means of production style leftist, that I call them flat earthers of economics. The huge difference between those people who look at all of history and say, I think we could really do this right if we try one more time. And then the liberals, that say, okay, I want to be on this base of classical liberalism and capitalism, but maybe I differ from Republicans and conservatives and everybody on the right. And right here, you're seeing a debate between classical liberals. Right. Two different versions that have the same goals and believe in independence and freedom. And so it's really fun to read the differences in those. That being said, let's get into number 1. First quote.
I'm gonna open it up.
Let's crack open the books. First quote that I want to talk about, just straight up and out there. I love this. Hamilton says, or Publius says, I should say, I am clearly of opinion it is your interest to adopt it. I am convinced this is the safest course for your liberty, your dignity, and your happiness. And that word dignity really gets me going. I love that. It really does shine true too, and it reminds me of everything we've seen over the last 2 years with the pandemic. I think the American government that we're seeing right now has just chopped us off at our knees. We're buckled, and we don't have our dignity because our livelihoods have really been taken from us in so many ways. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. So I'll talk briefly about where we are today. I mean, we are at a time that the founders actually in the Federalist Papers will warn about, right?
Yep.
And that is violations of separation of powers, horizontally and vertically, individual rights being castigated and abrogated, and all this stuff's going on, right? All that's happening today. And when you talk about our dignity being taken, it really is. We've been lied to, we've been kicked around, we've been just abused as a people. And I've always, quite frankly, been surprised at how quickly we've acquiesced to servitude.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Yeah,
I've got some bullets for that one.
But I mean, back then, when you start looking about what Hamilton's saying, he's saying basically, we're going to protect you, not as a parent would protect you, but as allowing you to make the decisions, assess the risk, mitigate or accept whatever risk it is of your choices. We're going to allow you to do that. What government's going to do, though, we're going to protect your rights. Mm-hmm. Not only are we going to protect your rights, but ultimately the centralization, there'll be very few reasons for the central government to act, and they refer to it as a federal government because it was essentially a confederation, and that's why they refer to it as federal, because we're walking out of the Articles of Confederation. We weren't supposed to really be dancing around over here, but we did, and so we're a federal government. But the reality is, where we are today is a national government, where the power has been centralized and removed from the states and the individuals, and so ultimately, when Hamilton's talking about that, I think of him saying, okay, we're going to protect you. Your dignity includes your ability to choose and be safe in your choices, so that the bullies, because we're going to talk about tyrannies of majorities, tyrannies of minorities. I mean, they kind of allude to it in the first Federalist paper. He says we're basically going to check those. We're going to check that power, and you can be safe. You can make a reasonable choice. It'll be a rational choice. They thought of people as rational, as reasonable. It may be a stupid choice, but you'll have a reason for doing it. That type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that, actually, so here's one of the quotes that gets into really the first topic of number one, or one of my favorites. It's really just the question, and he's asking the people to consider this: are we good enough for liberty? Can we actually make this happen? Can all of us really come together and do something like this? And he says, it has been frequently remarked that it seems to have been reserved to the people of this country, by their conduct and example, to decide the important question, whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident or force. And whoa, that's exactly what you just said.
Well, maybe not exactly, but I was trying to get there. You know, I mean,
it's just as graceful. You sounded great. No, but it's really beautiful, and we see that today with COVID, where I was talking to someone and I was like, this is fascinating. We're in a time of such luxury that we are actively choosing to have an authoritarian style of government over a life of choice. We're choosing this lifestyle when it's a simple choice to start standing up for ourselves and saying we're not going to take it anymore. But imagine being in such luxury today that we can say we'd rather be told what to do. And then this is just the complete opposite of that. And so when we go to that concept of are we good enough for liberty, the next quote, that my favorite quote, might be one of my favorite quotes about the Federalist Papers, from Charles Kessler. He says, Publius presented the Constitution as an achievement and good government, a plan worthy not only of momentary applause, but of the rational and enduring consent of an enlightened public.
Right.
Want to know what the problem is right now? We don't have an enlightened public.
Exactly right. We are not an enlightened public. We might be an indoctrinated public, but we're not enlightened, that's
We're
for
not.
sure.
And so we can't possibly rationally consent. And part of this is also that we don't have an understanding of comparative history, some of the basics. We've been failed in the classroom. So many issues are sprouting from this, but it leads to us not being able to look at the Constitution and the founding documents and say, wow, history has been really, really bad. This is a shining beacon of hope in it. It's not perfect. America's not perfect. Nothing here is perfect, but it's really, truly so fascinating that we achieved so much. And so it all goes back. Whenever I see this, what we see in Afghanistan, what we see with Joe Biden, what we see in their behavior, but then we also go on social media and we see what the crazy people are doing in the streets and what they're saying about politics, and we wonder, how could our politicians do this to us? And then we look at the people. How can you say this kind of stuff? Well, our government was made to be a reflection of the people, and right now our people are not enlightened, and then our politicians are weak because our people are weak as well. So it's really all accumulating, and my question for you, everybody always reaches out to me and they say, Morgan, you're the girl that loves history. You're the one who's always posting pictures of the Federalist Papers book. What do you have to say about the solution for this? Where is the check now when you have Joe Biden ignoring orders from the Supreme Court and doing really serious obstructions when this has never really been done before?
Yeah. So we could take the whole hour talking about this solutions. But I mean, the solution ultimately is that the people have to understand their role in government. That I have no power as a congressman. I have, except for what's been delegated to me by the people. People get the kind of government they deserve, and you know what? I mean, they really do. And so the solution is ultimately, I keep telling people, the solution is going to be federalism, which is strong governors, strong state legislatures, telling the federal government, we don't want your money, because if we take your money, you're going to bring mandates and chains on my state. And if enough strong governors say that and push back, then Congress, most of my colleagues don't get this, but many do, Congress will have to retrench and say, well, okay, there's a problem going on here. Because right now we have centralized power into D.C., and the founders' purpose is, as you go through the entire Federalist Papers, you're going to get to do that, it's a fascinating read, is to diffuse power, get it away. You don't want an oligarchy or some small group or even an individual having all the power. And that's what we have right now.
Yeah.
And so that's how we got to stop that. The best way to do it is for the states, legislatures, and citizenry to stand up and say no more. No more.
Okay, so at the state level, and I hear that a lot. People are like, I can't wait for Ron DeSantis to be president. I'm like, whoa, calm down, calm down. He's like reinvigorating the passion of federalism because he's letting people know, no, this is how you actually spark change. I don't need to be president to do something like that. He's leading a new conversation.
And he's standing up and he's saying, no, we're not going to follow you, Fauci.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to do this, Joe Biden.
Yeah.
We're going to do what Florida citizens want to do.
Yeah. So this is where we get into the weeds. We tell people, okay, if you're in a blue state, then you got to leave. You got to go to a place like Florida. People are scared right now. Like, I hope you guys understand this. My DMs are full of parents that are worried about the future of the country, and they say, am I supposed to pick up and leave right now? Like, is that really the solution with our federalist system? I'm supposed to go to a state that I can be protected by my governor? What if the governor gets changed out in the next 4 years and it's not somebody that can protect us too, because we're on this big blue wave of these people that believe in authority over choice? So what is the solution for an average family member that wants to really bunker in for the long run?
Well, so the states are supposed to be the laboratories of democracy, right? I mean, that's really what they're supposed to be. And the founders basically said, you know, I'll just use this. If you like socialism, you'd go to California or New York. I mean, that's where you're going to get socialism. If you want a more libertarian, more conservative point of view, you might move to Arizona, Texas, Florida, something like that. Hopefully Arizona. I mean, that really needs to be that way. But in any event, they anticipated you voting with your feet. And so yes, they could move, or they could just try to find like-minded people to change where they are.
Yeah.
And more often than not, that's why so many people are exiting California, is because they can't change. They can't get it done there. They can't get it done in Oregon or Washington. And we've seen what's happened is, as leftists move to Arizona, it gets harder to keep the libertarian / conservative individualism, rugged individualism that we used to pride ourselves on. So that becomes the real challenge. And so each family, each individual has to make that choice. But the founders certainly anticipated, that's what happened during the Jim Crow era. Yeah. That's what happened in you had emancipation states, you had slave states. People voted with their feet.
Yeah. Now, what about at that state level? Is there a solution when we go another level down to local, or is this truly state power?
No, it's local. Yeah, it gets right down to the local stuff too. I mean, look. So we talk about. I just mentioned indoctrination. We've all talked a little bit about that today.
It's prevalent.
That is a local, really truly a local issue. So you need your school boards.
And if I could interject, something I really love. It's in the Arizona Constitution, Article 2, Section 2. It asserts that all political power is inherited in the people.
Right.
And government derives their just power from the consent of the governed. And it goes strictly right into local government, smaller government. As individuals, we have that power. Aristotle stated that he talked a lot about civic virtue, as in what should a citizen do to enact in his or her political affairs. And he stated that they need to go to meetings. They should go to school board. I know there were school board meetings there, but applying to today's terms, school board meetings or LD meetings, or getting involved, or understanding. Like what you said, we don't have enlightened citizens anymore because there isn't that emphasis of learning and trying to understand, one, the Federalist Papers. Whoever's listening today has definitely made that step.
Yeah. Thanks.
Or reading the Constitution, or asking these questions. And it's easy just to follow rather than to lead and ask questions. And that's what we're seeing today with COVID and all these other issues where we're just following. A lot of people are, I hate to say the word sheep, but it's easier to follow. It is easier to listen.
Sheeple's a little nicer.
We the sheeple.
Yeah, well, they say, I remember a few years ago they were saying, oh, Gen Z is going to be the most conservative generation in America in a long time, and they've got the world at their fingertips on their phone. They can look up anything, and they aren't going to be tricked, and they're going to be fully knowledgeable. Okay, just because we have
tell you what.
just because we have the world at our fingertips on our phone doesn't mean people are actually taking the initiative to do it. And so inspiring people to do that is truly part of the culture wars. It's part of like reinvigorating. So I always encourage people to truly like, you don't have to consent to the style of life that we have built in America in 2021. Like, you can rethink education. You can rethink community activism and local involvement. You don't have to subscribe to what is being put onto you. And that's a really fun topic because it brings in the homeschooling mamas that never really saw themselves as political before. It brings in all these new people and factions that could be brought into our movement.
If you want to see an example of failed socialism, go to an Indian reservation.
A lot of the soldiers were very aggressive, so the women did get raped.
Muerte means a place of suffering, dying, starvation, nothing good.
I didn't realize how corrupt things were. I didn't realize what kind of environment we were living in.
We had no running water, we had no power.
They de-incentivize people from, opportunity.
That's why our suicide rate has climbed up astronomical rates. I think that's what I'm also projecting to my people, even if I have to fight you to save you.
Let's shift topic a little bit into the next thing that I want to discuss. One of Hamilton's warnings in number 1 was that if the people, after looking at all this information, made the wrong decision on ratification, he said it may be, quote, the most general misfortune of mankind. And that's a really big, foreshadowing, because look at what's happened. We are the leader, we are the free world, right? The president is called the leader of the free world. I can't imagine America not existing. I mean, we have driven so much positive change. And I know that's really hard to talk about right now with Afghanistan happening. I know it's a hard topic because people are mad at our country right now. We're honestly very frustrated with our own government for all of COVID and everything that's happened. And so at the end of the day, though, we are exceptional and we've achieved so much. And when you had that weakened system that the Anti-Federalists were advocating for, could that have been possible for us to become the worldwide leader? Would that still have been in existence if we didn't do this? And really, how much positive change have we caused because we are this one great union?
That's a great and profound question. I mean, so let's think about that for a second. So the Anti-Federalists were basically saying, let's stay a confederation. One of the big fears is you still had Great Britain that was looking at us. You had France. Still, we didn't have France owned all of what became the Louisiana Purchase to the west of what that little Atlantic seaboard, and no Navy, no Army, no real way to protect yourselves really. All you had was this idea, and so I think Hamilton was prophetic in some ways. He was saying, look, you know what? If we do this, we can't even get it together under the current form of our government because, as Matthew was pointing out, and Morgan, as you were saying, we just can't seem to get along state by state. I mean, it's not working out real well. And so we need to maybe do something differently. And this would be it. And by doing it, by having a separation of powers, a la Montesquieu, right? I mean, when he's saying, well, we're going to have separate powers, we're going to protect individual rights, we're going to have state sovereignty, and that's why we used to elect senators in the rational way, in a very different way than we do today. He's basically saying the form of government we're going to create will last and endure forever. I mean, so you got John Adams, who's not there. He's over in Europe as an ambassador. He says, basically, I see 300 million people from coast to coast at some point in the future.
It happened.
It happened. These guys believed we would be the light on the hill. That was it.
Imagine being able to envision that. I mean, put yourself in their shoes at the time. You have no idea. I mean, you just won freedom for a country, and it's just these 13 little Confederacy things, and everything's crazy. You don't even know how far west the country goes. Who knows what's really happening? It's truly fascinating, it's really. I always put myself in their shoes of when I make decisions. I'm like, oh, those guys made some serious decisions. I can get through this. I can figure this one out. But it's truly. a beautiful, beautiful thing.
It is.
Yeah.
And unity is such a beautiful thing as well. And that's the idea of this Constitution and the ideas of the Founding Fathers at that time. They wanted a strong government, a unified government, a unified people as one. They were afraid that states were going to go into war with other states. They saw France started allying with southern states, and they saw that Spain started infiltrating and influencing, and France was influencing too. They didn't want America to be another colony of the European Empire. Mm-hmm. They wanted to be independent from that. Right. But how can you be independent and strong? You need a centralized government, and that's what Alexander Hamilton emphasized and hammered in his first article here in his essay, is the importance of a strong federalized government. And that's what brought the Constitution together as well. And you said Montesquieu. Montesquieu, he had this awesome idea of, he recognized how a government should be strong, but also the importance of separating those powers, where if it's too strong, then you can't steer that ship. But if it's separated, you could have checks and balances, and that's more of, I think, Federalist 10 there and Federalist 51. Hopefully we talk about that in a future date.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
Well, putting us in that sense of like, okay, put yourself in the 1700s.
Yeah.
All of history before that was pretty dark.
Yes.
I mean, people are smelly, and I can't even imagine just the hygiene back then. I mean, wooden teeth. This is some crazy stuff. And people, for the first time...
Bleeding. If you're sick, they're going to put a leech on you.
Right?
Or they cut you.
So it's just, the world was really different. And these concepts of like, I think people could actually control themselves and run a government on their own. Like, they could make it happen. That was truly unique. Yes. And yes, we had like Rome and Greece way back when, but I have this weird obsession with Catherine the Great. Don't judge me. And so I read about her a lot, and she's talked a lot, or there's all these books about how like she was fascinated by Europe and the thoughts that were coming out, Rousseau and all these more now leftist leaning people, that their ideas led to some really dangerous stuff as we saw it play out over the coming centuries. But when you're in this time of monarchies and dynasties and empires, and you hear somebody like Marx or Rousseau or what all these people back then were saying, you go, wow, something for the people. Of course you're going to get inspired by that concept because it was totally new.
Yes.
The interesting thing, though, is that there was that way that went to the left, and then there were our founders that had a completely different way of doing something for the people, and that was the people representing themselves and running this democracy, this republic. And I love that. But when we look at all of this, one of the things that Hamilton says in the paper, and this really gets me excited because it's just insane, he warns, Publius warns, that history proves false prophets will come with promises to benefit all the people. Yeah. It'll help everybody. The people will benefit.
Government will help you.
Back then, in 1787, he's saying, listen, if somebody says they're coming and they will benefit all the people, don't listen to them. History will prove them wrong. And so if you look at that in 1787, history had already shown that. look what happened in the coming centuries, especially the 20th century, 1900s, as you had the socialists and communists rise and say that they're going to benefit all people and do things in the name of the people, all this stuff. And then, of course, we have the modern day socialists in AOC and the Squad and the Democratic Socialists of America. So that is truly one of my favorite parts of the Federalist Papers because it was so stinking true.
Yeah, you know, and I'm going to read from the paper here because your quote there reminds me of this quote, and I took some notes years ago when I was reading this, and just again, you know, and so it says, the greatest number, and he's talking about these demagogues who end up running for and end up as tyrants. The greatest number have begun their career by paying an obsequious court to the people. In other words, what he's saying is, a lot of these guys get out there and they're doing exactly what you said. They're basically going out there to glad hand and lie to everybody and tell them, is that what you need? You got it. You're going to get something different. It's going to be just marvelous. They're obsequious. They're to the people, but they commence as demagogues and end as tyrants. Now, when he says that, my notes say Al Gore.
Mine say AOC.
And mine say Joe Biden.
That is so funny.
So, I mean, when you read that, you go, like, the guy was right. I mean, if you've been in politics, you see this all the time. And so we now say, oh, do you keep your campaign promises or you don't keep your campaign promises? Well, the reality is these guys make every promise in the world. And, oh, you're going to get a cell phone, you're going to get free health care, you're going to get, everybody's going to get college paid for free, etc. All of the socialist things you were alluding to. Mm-hmm. And then in the end, they can't deliver, so they fill that void now with tyranny and authoritarianism. And do we not see that in America today? I mean...
Absolutely. History has been so clear about what happens when someone speaks like that. Yeah. And I'm going to have to look more into, you know, what are the examples he's referencing, because what were the examples back in 1787 that you could say, listen, history's proven this is not a good way to go. And then we still messed up for another 3 centuries. But it is, for me, when you hear young people talk about collective ownership by the people, it's very, very dangerous. And when we talk about the leftist groups right now, there's specifically the Democratic Socialists of America. You know, they always manipulate their language and everything. And all it takes is looking on their website. I don't know if you've ever just taken a little Google search. It takes 5 seconds for me to go to their website and it reads, we don't have a long-term plan to actually achieve our goals of people's ownership of private companies and industry. But in the short term, to get to our long-term goal, we're just going to increase taxes and regulation on these businesses to slowly gain control of them so that we can achieve our long-term goal. Bada bing, bada boom. It was a 5-second Google search to find out that these people aren't interested in becoming like Nordic Europe. They're interested in becoming a seize the means style of production socialist country like we see in Venezuela. And that's why I just put my foot down whenever I hear any of those DSA endorsed people speaking, because I just don't trust them.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. So how's the regulation? Well, so oddly enough, we're going to be considering a $3.5 trillion spend here in the next few weeks in Congress. It's filled with Green New Deal stuff. And what's all Green New Deal? It's all regulatory. Yeah. You're right. Mm-hmm. We're not seizing the ownership. We are just going to tell you what you can and cannot do with your property. And that's really, I mean, the libertarian approach, and where I think the founders were is, hey, we want you to be able to do what you want to do with your property, your person, provided you don't hurt any other person, provided you don't hurt anybody else's property, those types of things. And they provided correctives if there was that kind of problem. These people, the ones that you're alluding to, that are in Congress, for Pete's sakes, they want to take it and they want to control you, Matthew, and you, Morgan, and me, and everybody else in this country. Man, that's the Platonic ideal, which should be rejected because you create an elite that controls everybody else. And believe me, we'll be the everybody else that gets controlled.
Well, this is where I get all confused. Not confused, but just more so like, okay, I see what you were saying there, because I'm more so in favor of the Federalist Papers. Right. When I read the Anti-Federalist Papers, it opens us up to weakness when we don't have that strong union. Nowadays, though, it's hard for me because you see what our federal national government, I love how you did that. you see what they are capable of and what they are doing, and it really is disheartening for someone like me, because I'm like, where in the papers does it say it's going to fix this? You know what I mean? I'm like searching through, I'm like, huh, and people message me, they're like, Morgan, what do they say? And I'm trying to find the solutions here. I'm trying to figure out what is that check that's going to stop this massive bureaucracy, this unchecked executive branch especially. I don't see a way out of it. And sometimes I wonder, is it just so big at this point, there's nothing that can be done? That's what people are really wondering.
Believe me, as a guy in Congress, I sometimes say the same thing.
I can't imagine.
I
give you a lot
sometimes
of
say
credit.
the same thing. It's like, what the heck? I mean, one of the things that the framers, so that's why I say you got to take it back to the states. States have to get this, because if you look at it, we now have, we're supposed to have 3 branches of government.
Yes.
Many political scientists will say we actually have a 4th branch, and that is the bureaucracy. And because
that'll get you.
Yeah, the bureaucracy, and you look the way Congress legislates now, what they do is they create some kind of vague law, and then they delegate rulemaking authority to the bureaucrats. And the bureaucrats, so they're supposed to be the executive branch. So the executive branch is way overblown, and we've tried to bring them back, and it's been remarkably hard. They're deep, they're entrenched, and they're careerists. So they say, well, okay, the president's going to appoint Matthew over us. So what? Matthew will be gone in a couple of years.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
I have friends that have been appointed, that were appointed by Trump, and they say the people that work under me just refuse to do anything.
Yeah, they slow walk everything.
Yeah.
Or they can give you bad information, so you're relying on something that's not true. And so the other thing is you got to get the people electing the right members of Congress and the Senate, because if we did that,
I wish.
We could
We're working on it.
We could dismantle that bureaucracy, because we need to.
Yeah.
We need to dismantle.
So how does that? So I think everybody in America can attest to this. I've door knocked for so many people. It's not even funny. My little feet hurt so bad after that season.
Same here.
And then, 2 years comes and goes, and then nothing really happens. You have some of the biggest problems in the country. And I'm talking like healthcare. We're talking student loan crisis. I'm a big believer in the fact that, listen, if conservatives actually went after the student loan crisis and the cost of higher education and the government involved in it, the left always promises structural change and systemic change. It's AOC's favorite language. But we would actually be the ones to cause systemic structural change if we took an axe to it. And that was aggressive. But it's still, I wonder what the heck goes on when you guys go there. What is blocking action on some of the more important issues, and how come it's just this disappointment after disappointment for Americans that go and do the local county activism, send the people to Congress to represent us, and then they come back every 2 years and say, this is the most important election of our time.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it continues to be the most important election for our time, because Congress has screwed everything up for the previous ones, right?
I literally believe that too.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I'm like, no, you guys, this is actually pretty bad. And so I tell people that they're not lying this time. They're serious.
Yeah. This is more consequential than the last 2 years, and this because they made things worse in those 2 years, and we got to stop them. So the way it kind of works is, as we go through the Federalist Papers, you'll see that there was supposed to be a sieve there on Congress, so that you got the system, and ultimately the only thing that's spit out at the end is supposed to be sound, rational policy become law, right? That's really what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to facilitate and make it really zoom through there, because look, in the Constitution they said Congress has to at least meet 1 day a year. These guys hoped that the federal government would be minimal in scope and effort.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's this massive monster.
No, it's massive. So we get back there, and we got people that they don't want to keep their promises.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer. If I promise I'm going to do something, if I tell you I'm going to introduce these 10 bills, I'm going to bust my tail to introduce those 10 bills. And we're going to get that done. But we've got other people that not so much.
Yeah.
And now we're fighting an indoctrinated left.
Yeah.
Think about that. These are people.
It's a bad combo. You have these elites combined with these, let's be honest, idiots. And I mean the flat earthers of economics. I'm not talking about the naive young people out there that are being misguided. I think there's a huge difference. But you have really dangerous people out there that are rioting in the streets causing damage, saying they want to end classical liberalism and capitalism in America. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So I wonder, when we look at like the Anti-Federalist Papers, they warned about this. They were worried that this is what was going to happen, and they said some really aggressive stuff about it. We'll have to include it in future episodes because I have a whole list of quotes. Like they were aggressive with their language, saying this is the worst thing that could happen to mankind potentially, the U.S. Constitution, and so it's kind of funny to read that stuff. But they were kind of right in a way. Do you think that? Like, what do you guys think of the fact that they warned an oligarchy, an aristocracy, this big elitist hub was going to form that was going to eventually oppress the people, whether it was in the short term or the long term?
Well, I think they were giving a good warning.
Yeah.
A legitimate warning. I also think that the Constitution, I think it was divinely inspired. That's just me. And
beautiful.
And if it was inspired, and you look at it, it has its flaws, but it was set up and designed, as John Adams said, for moral and righteous people, because that's what it takes to be free.
Yeah.
You have to, if you've got let's say 330 million people, and you've got 50 million of them that are actively trying to undermine the laws and the system, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough sledding.
And are we good enough for liberty?
And
it gets back to that question.
You're exactly right.
Are we good enough? Are we moral enough, smart enough, educated and knowledgeable enough? All of these things, it's required for us to uphold the Constitution the way that we need to. And so I really, really hope we can. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the division of government as well, it plays a fundamental role to can we keep freedom going. Another thing that I really like is Locke talks about natural rights and the freedoms of that. That is life, liberty, and property. And he talks about how this is a God-given gift that we have that government should not take from us. But here we are seeing it in this year and years past where people are willing to give that up. And when we give that up, again, are we able to maintain freedom? Are we able to even handle freedom? And that's a scary question to ask ourselves. And we're seeing people in COVID, this is prime time right now, where people are giving up their freedoms. What else are they willing to give up? You know, and is it easier to have a demonstrous government that controls everything that we have, or to come up with questions, or to govern ourselves? You know, that's where we're coming towards, and I'm really afraid to see what happens going to happen next. But I'm energetic to see that there are Gen Zers who are awake to that, who are reading the Constitution, who are fighting each day to
Have you seen those chants in the football stadium?
Oh, I have.
I have.
Gen Z's awake. Let's end on a good note, you guys. We'll wrap it up. And one of the lighter, more positive things we could end on is Publius talks about how philanthropy and patriotism are really, really important pillars of a prevailing Republican government. Do you want to maybe enlighten us and enlighten the listeners on how we can instill those values again in the future generations, and what we can do to make sure that we get those things back?
Well, you know, philanthropy and patriotism, I think what's happening now is the pendulum is swinging back. For patriotism on that side. I think it's a natural pendulum that goes, but I think most Americans are center right. Most Americans really love this country.
Yes.
And I think it's just a few radicals that really don't. And so I think patriotism is in vogue. I think the Afghanistan thing served well to wake up Americans to.
I feel like we're going to get a new Toby Keith song soon or something.
Yeah, a boot in somebody's tail is what we're going to talk about. But yeah, absolutely. I think that patriotism is coming back, and I think philanthropy. We're still the most giving nation in the world as far as charity. So those two things. But it gets back to something we were talking about earlier. I do think we've got to recover the institutions at the local levels, as Matthew was saying, Morgan, as you were saying. We've got to take those institutions back, whether it's the schools, post-secondary ed. Oh my gosh.
We're making it happen, though. That's the thing.
You guys, TPUSA is doing a fantastic job. And I just believe that as we start making inroads in those institutions, you take off the blinders that come with this indoctrination, and people see it, and they love the country.
Yeah.
They love being free. They love being able to make choices. I mean, if you take freedom down to somebody's choices, individual choices, they're going to say, well, wait, I want to be free. I mean, we don't want to be another Venezuela. I mean, and we don't want to be without food, and they want their internet. I mean, good grief. People want to live their lives And as you do that, it births and sustains philanthropy and patriotism. And those things, actually, it's a great synergy because it'll keep building on. And I'm really hopeful.
Absolutely, I am too, and I think, you know, as tough as this Afghanistan situation has been for us, it really reinvigorated in a lot of American hearts that, whoa, this is not how we behave. This is not how our leaders should act. This is not how we want the world to see us. I think it made a lot of people stop and think of, like, what can I do? And one of my favorite things, I just did a speech in Colorado, and Mike Pompeo spoke after me, and he said, a lot of people tell me they don't do politics. Well, I've got a message for you. Politics does you.
That's right.
And so that's really such a positive message for people, and that means doing it at the most local levels. A lot of movement is happening at the local levels, and we're going to continue to see that. So thank you guys so much for joining episode 1. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you, Congressman Biggs. Wow, thank you for joining, and we really appreciate the conversation. And thank you for joining.
Thank you.
All right, thank you guys for watching episode 1 of Freedom Papers. I'm Morgan Zegers. You can tune in every week for a new discussion on one of the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, and all of the great American values that we are going to bring back in our country. See you next week.